and the campuses to turn off your video camera unless you would like to speak or need to present an item. If after turning on your video, you want to be acknowledged to engage in the discussion, please raise your hand. For those of you wearing masks, please remember to speak into your microphones loudly and clearly so everybody can hear you. And finally, remember to identify yourself when making comments or asking questions. And with that, Jess, please call the roll.
President Peterson.
Here.
Regent Vice President Greeby. Regent Atwell.
Here.
Regent Bechtel. Regent Bogus.
Here.
Regent Cologne.
Here.
Regent Jones.
Here.
Regent Klein. Regent Levzo. Regent Mennedeeds. Regent Miller.
Here.
Regent Peterson.
Here.
Regent Rye.
Here.
Regent Saffold. Regent Stanford Taylor.
Here.
Regent Tucker.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Here.
Regent Weatherly.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Yes. Regents, as we consider items on today's agenda, are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding today's open session? Okay, seeing none, let's get started. Welcome to the June meeting of the UW System Board of Regents. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce and welcome two new colleagues to this board for their first regular session meeting. First, Dr. Ashok Rai is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Prevea Health, a physician-led multi-specialty healthcare provider working in partnership with the Hospital Sisters Health System across Wisconsin. Dr. Rai's passion to redesign healthcare in the U.S. embraces the movement from fee-for-service methods of payment to value-based care, which rewards healthcare organizations for their work in preventative health care and encouraging patients to live healthy lifestyles and not for the amount of procedures they perform. Dr. Rai was born and raised in Michigan. After an undergraduate degree right here from UW-Milwaukee, he completed his medical degree at the Medical College of Wisconsin and then a residency in internal medicine and pediatrics through Michigan State University. Following residency, he specialized in hospital medicine and held various leadership positions at Prevea before becoming its president and CEO in 2009. He continues to practice medicine and cares for patients at Woodside Lutheran Nursing Home in Green Bay. Dr. Rai lives in Green Bay with his wife and 6 children. He plays an active role in community and healthcare organizations, and we're absolutely delighted to have you join this board. Regent Rai, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, President Peterson, and good afternoon, fellow regents, faculty, staff, students, and guests. My bio publisher will likely tell you about me as a professional, so I wanted to instead spend a few minutes today to explain my why when it comes to serving as a regent. During the 1989-90 academic year, I was 17 years old, hailing from the suburbs of Detroit, traveling the country, interviewing at combined undergraduate and medical programs. And although I was accepted to others, it was this campus and the medical college that brought me to Wisconsin. I'll always credit Medical College of Wisconsin for making me into the physician I am today, but it was UW-Milwaukee that truly forged the person before you now. It was here that I learned about business and public speaking. It was on this campus that I took my first art class, where a faculty member told me to definitely stick to medicine, as I had no hope as an artist. It was in the rooms and the halls of Sandburg that I discovered true friendship. It was also the place where racism hit me square in the face for the first time. But I was so supported by this campus and its resources. I spent countless hours in this very building, involved in student organizations, and I even worked right above us in the food service offices. So you see, it was this campus, part of our UW system, that I owe so much to. It made me. It allowed me the chance to fall in love with our great state of Wisconsin, which I hope to never move away from. And now I have the honor and accept the great responsibility of paying it forward. Many, including some of you, have asked me about the time commitment it takes to be a regent and if I'm up for that. And my response to all of you is that the service I hope to provide over the next 7 years will only be a fraction of paying back what the UW system has done for me. Thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you.
We're very glad to have you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Regent Brianna Tucker of Milwaukee. Brianna is a student at UW-Stevens Point, double majoring in political science and Spanish with a minor in criminal justice. She says her great passions are diversity and equity, affordable higher education, and helping people. Looking to the future, Brianna hopes to someday represent Milwaukee County as a U.S. Congresswoman and to actively work to improve the lives of people in her area. Welcome, Regent Tucker. Would you like to say a few words?
Hi, it's great to be here today. Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to say that we're back in Milwaukee, back on my homeland, and I'm excited to work with all of you for the next 2 years.
You're welcome aboard. It's a home game for Regent Tucker, and it is also for our next recognized individual. I'm pleased to say that John Miller, who was named as a regent back in February to succeed the late Jose Delgado, has now been officially appointed to serve as a full term. We look forward to working with you, John. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Finally, in one last update on the UW River Falls Chancellor search, you saw the announcement several weeks ago that Dr. Maria Gallo, president of Delaware Valley University in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, has been named the 20th Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin River Falls. Dr. Gallo is expected to start in early June, so we will formally introduce her at that next board meeting. I'd also like to take the time and the opportunity to express our gratitude and appreciation to Connie Foster, who has served this past year as UW River Falls interim chancellor. Connie is a higher education and leadership consultant who spent more than 2 decades as a faculty member, administrator, and interim chancellor at UW River Falls. Her experience has been invaluable in navigating the many challenges posed by the pandemic this past year, and UW River Falls campus community benefited from her taking the helm at this critical time. So let's all give Connie a round of applause for her service. Thank you, Chancellor Foster. At this time, I'll turn it over to President Thompson. I believe you have an introduction.
Thank you so very much, President. And I first, before I introduce the individual that I want to introduce, I would like to say on behalf of the board and myself personally, Connie Foster has served herself with diplomacy, ability, and great integrity. She did everything I asked her to do and did it with a smile and always went the extra mile. Connie, we're going to miss you, and we love you, and we thank you so very much for your hard work, being the interim president and chancellor for 2 terms at River Falls, and now going into retirement. I applaud you and wish you well, and thank you again, Connie. I would like to, at this time, President Peterson, to take this opportunity to also extend our gratitude to Laurent Heller, UW-Madison's Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, for the many years of service at our flagship University of Madison, Wisconsin. Laurent recently accepted a new opportunity at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore after Chancellor Blank and myself and several other people tried to convince him that that was a terrible mistake. But he thought otherwise, and he and his wife are going to Maryland, and we wish him well. He was a frequent presenter before this board, and we all appreciated, I know we all do, his clear explanations, his deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing higher education today. Thank you, Laurent, for your hard work, your many services, and contributions to the University of Wisconsin. With that, I am very pleased now to introduce a familiar face in a new role, our friend and colleague. Most of the individuals who are not the new board members will remember Rob Kramer. He testified in front of us as the vice chairman of systems many, many times. And prior to joining UW-Madison, I had the privilege of having Rob work for me when I was governor and he worked in the Department of Administration. So Rob and I go back 100 years. And prior to joining UW-Madison in November 2020 as an interim Associate Vice Chancellor, Facilities Planning and Management. Rob served as Vice President for Administration for the University of Wisconsin System. And effective May 21st, he is now UW-Madison's interim Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, and will do an excellent job following Loren's big shoes, but he will be able to fill them, I am sure. Rob Kramer is a talent. We all know him. We all respect him, and we all wish him well. So welcome back, Rob, and back to you, President Peterson.
Thank you, President Thompson. The records of the April 9th, 2021 meeting and the May 11th, 2021 special meeting of the Board of Regents have been provided. May I have a motion to approve these two records?
So moved.
So move, Regent Bechtel. May I have a second? Second, Regent Greeby. Thank you. The report of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board has also been provided. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to make my way to the podium. I'll need that. Well, I'm ending where I began. 2 years ago, I accepted your nomination to serve as president, and now we're back in person, thankfully, in familiar Panther territory, and it feels great. This will, in fact, be my final report as president of the board. So I'd like to take this opportunity to share a few thoughts. First, it's been my great honor to serve in this role. When I took on this position 2 years ago, I knew and expected there would be challenges. There always are, but certainly I, nor all of us, didn't know what would actually lie ahead with COVID-19. Looking back, I'm continually impressed at how our UW campus communities responded to this unprecedented public health crisis. Our campus and system leadership, our faculty and staff, and most particularly our students, stepped up in magnificent fashion. This culture of responsibility was heralded across the state as we navigated through the pandemic. Often on the fly and with the rules of the game frequently changing, we came up with a plan, a very successful plan as it turned out, to serve our campuses and our communities extremely well. We called for and implemented system-wide health and safety protocols that included masking up and social distancing. We pivoted on extremely short notice to presenting a full online UW education. The classic "you're on mute" reminder quickly became part of our everyday lexicon. We learned how to stay connected with each other by adopting and accepting that things were going to have to be done differently. And it was again a huge part of our culture of responsibility. The UW's aggressive testing program was the backbone of our plan, and UW campuses started posting the lowest positivity rates in the state. But we were not done there. Under President Thompson's leadership, and with the active support of this board, as well as the federal government to the tune of millions, the UW system started offering surge testing to the general public, another tool to help get through this pandemic and get it under control. In total, the UW system tested over 1 million students, faculty, staff, and community members across our campuses. 1 million tests, simply amazing. And when vaccines became available, the UW system opened vaccination clinics at 11 campus sites across the state, providing easy access to campus communities and the public. In fact, nearly 1 in 20 of all vaccinations in the state have been administered at UW facilities. 1 in 20. That is a remarkable statistic. Turning from COVID to our campuses, we've gone through some tough times and learned some difficult lessons, but I'm incredibly proud of how the UW system and its people stepped up. As President Thompson likes to say, when the state has a problem, the UW system wants to be a part of that solution, and I can confidently say we undoubtedly have been. We faced other challenges. In early 2019, our search for a successor to retiring UW system president Craig Cross came to an unanticipated conclusion with a failed search. It was a learning experience, but I believe we have come out far better than expected through that setback. will now quote Regent Kyle Weatherly, who during his confirmation hearing called it the most successful failed search in higher education in the history of the United States. He is referring, of course, to our most fortunate achievement in convincing former Governor Tommy Thompson to join us as interim president at a time when we keenly needed him. I think we can all agree the governor has attacked the challenges of this job with his characteristic enthusiasm, tenacity, charm, and chops. For my part, it's been my most ardent wish to leave the UW system in a better place than it was when I started my service. One area we've made progress that I'm particularly proud of has been our increased attention to the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. These discussions are now regularly woven into our board meetings. In February of this year, addressing achievement gaps in higher ed was a key focus of our meeting. In addition to hiring last year a system-level officer devoted to these important issues, we've taken tangible steps to expand educational opportunity to underrepresented and underserved students through our new Regent Opportunity Scholarships. The Board of Regents, during these last 2 years, is committed to providing over $1 million for scholarships annually. This fall, we will award 293 Regent Diversity Scholarships. We've also put action behind our words by not only identifying a more diverse pool of candidates for our chancellor searches, but also hiring chancellors from populations that previously were underrepresented in higher education. These are great representative accomplishments, but our journey is just beginning. We may have been hindered in reaching some of our goals by the pandemic, but we are steadily increasing the profile and standing of the UW system overall through efforts like our All in Wisconsin campaign, which sought to make close connections between the businesses, communities, and people of Wisconsin with their public university. We're making great strides, and I hope and expect that campaign and its mission will continue. I should point out that strong leadership at the system level, leadership that is both seen and heard, is a big part of the UW system, playing a significant role in Wisconsin. A recent review of advertising value exposure offered by President Thompson and former President Ray Cross, especially relative to other comparable universities and university systems, highlights this pretty dramatically. The estimated ad value exposure for President Thompson over the past 10 months was $7.4 million. President Cross's value came in at $1.8 million during that similar time frame. This total media exposure compared favorably to the president of the University of Minnesota, for example, by a margin of well over 3-1, while the ad value equivalency here dwarfed that of similar sized systems like the University of Maryland system, which came in at $639,000. My point is the UW system is being seen and it's being heard. Enhancing our profile and credibility, I believe, is fundamental to our long-term success. It matters when legislators consider our budget request, for example. I know President Thompson is going to address the recent recommendations from the Joint Finance Committee regarding our budget ask in a few minutes, but I want to note that I'm extremely pleased we convinced the legislature to restore tuition setting policy with us as the Regents. I've been on this board since 2013. I have never set in-state tuition policy. These days appear to be over. We as a board will be responsible to handle that responsibility. In addition, system leadership played an incredibly pivotal role in ending the UW system's $45 million lapse. We are the only state agency that was given this flexibility, another great accomplishment. $90 million over the biennium will help our campuses immensely. If these recommendations proceed, they are huge steps forward for the UW system. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the chancellors for their tireless efforts to ensure UW universities exceed the mark when it comes to providing top-notch educational opportunities, research that changes lives, and investments in mental health services that keep our students and faculty persevering through challenging times. Your service to the state of Wisconsin is unrivaled and so appreciated. You have outstanding teams to work with on your campuses, and it shows every day. You embraced key objectives like investing and engaging with the business community to be third-party advocates for our campuses and our budget requests, working to grow student internships, and enhancing efforts to be transparent in our public accountability. I believe these have paid and will continue to pay great dividends for the University of Wisconsin system. I'd like to thank many members of the UW system administration who have supported me and all of us of the board in so many ways over these last several years. You've kept us informed, engaged, relevant, and productive. When I took over as president of the board, I was troubled by the culture of our system administration. Our chemistry was off and needed investment, work, and toil. As I look back on these last 2 years, I have to say one of the biggest achievements that we've made and accomplishments that we've delivered on is the camaraderie and the commitment our senior staff currently maintains. When you come to work motivated and prepared to make hard choices to make a difference, it shows, and for that, I want to express my sincere appreciation for your attitude and commitment to our mission and values at the UW system. A special shout out to Jess Lathrop, the Executive Director and Corporate Secretary for the board office. With patience, sometimes thoughtful resolve, and a good dose of humor, she always made sure that we were prepared for the many twists and turns of board business and all of the many expected and unexpected issues that come up along the way. Thank you, Jess. Finally, I want to salute the members of this board, past, present, and future, for your collegiality and your continuing commitment to putting performance over politics. At the end of the day, our North Star will always be what's in the best interest of the University of Wisconsin and the people of this state. I'm grateful for the opportunity you provided me to serve and for your wise counsel and your friendship. In various capacities, I've proudly served as a regent on this board since 2013, and I look forward to continuing to work with you over the coming year. Thank you again for the privilege. That concludes my report. Over to you, Governor Thompson.
Thank you very much, President Peterson. I also, in my capacity as acting president, I'd like to welcome Dr. Ray to the board and certainly our wonderful student. My only suggestion would be don't look for being a congresswoman, look to become governor of the state of Wisconsin. Brianna, and congratulations and thank you. And of course, to my friend John Miller, thank you for serving. What do you say about President Peterson? Except he's an outstanding individual. Somebody you can trust, somebody you can believe in, somebody that works hard, somebody who's dedicated and loves the University of Wisconsin. I've known Drew Peterson for a long time. I had the opportunity to appoint him to represent the state of Wisconsin in Washington while I was governor from 1966 to 1996 to 98. Can remember one afternoon when I went to Washington to have a report, we went out and ran on the mall for, well, I guess he ran and I walked fast. For a long period of time, discussing politics, government, and how we could get more federal dollars to come to the state of Wisconsin. He then came back and has had a tremendous career representing his telephone company in the state of Wisconsin. And you've seen it grow and expand, a lot of it due to Drew's leadership. And then, of course, that is not enough. For Drew, he wanted to serve the public. He first served in the capacity on the vocational school, where he ascended to the presidency of the vocational schools, which he also became then part of the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents. And then he came and got appointed to the board and has served with distinction, ending up as president of this august body. So he is an individual that I have worked with. The only thing that I sometimes question is when he came out to see me about a year ago and said, I got a request of you, Tommy. Would you come in and be the acting president of the University of Wisconsin? I said, why do you hate me? He says, no, this is a great opportunity and we need you. After several meetings throughout the next 5 days, I agreed to it. I'm very happy I did because I got a chance to work with all of you on the board, with great chancellors, all of which I think are outstanding, and also to see Drew Peterson at his best. An individual that believes passionately that the reason he was president was to make the University of Wisconsin system better. Not for any self-congratulations or laudatory remarks about him, but how do I make the University of Wisconsin system better? We've had meetings every week. There isn't a week goes by that we don't have a meeting, and usually it's daily. His time is there, his advice is always there, and we've been successful. We were able to reduce the size of the employees in administration, and we saved up to $10 million, which we put back into one of the $1 million for the Board of Regents scholarships. We also, I made a suggestion to Drew, didn't know if he would agree to it, is to terminate several leases so that we could consolidate all of the employees from 6 different locations in Madison. Now we're in 3 locations, all of which are within 3 blocks of each other. More efficiency, less money, and more productivity. We also set up the opportunity for procurement to payment system that is now up and operational, working and saving money and doing well. So I would like to, as acting president, say thank you, Drew Peterson, for your leadership, your dedication, your support for this system, and yes, Drew Peterson, I will answer your question. You have made the system better because you served, because you cared, and because you were present. So thank you and congratulations. Now to begin my report to you, the board. I'd like to provide an update on how we're continuing to make progress against the pandemic. We may not have smashed COVID completely, but we certainly have dented it. And we certainly have succeeded in keeping the university open. And to the chancellors, I say thank you. Not all of them agreed with me when I said we were going to open up on September 3rd. In fact, I'm looking over at them and can't find one of them that did agree with me. That's not true. Several did. Several were always there. And we opened up, and they graduated almost 37,000 students this past year. That's a tremendous accomplishment. A lot of the credit goes to the chancellors. A lot of the credit goes to the Board of Regents. We're doing it and making it possible. We are definitely gaining a great deal on this vaccine, on this pandemic. Cornerstone of our efforts now is trying to do our part to get as many people as possible vaccinated so we can return to full pre-pandemic campus life in fall of 2021. In that regard, I want to announce that I've hired temporarily former Regent Olivia Woodmassey to be the board's and my emissary to go around to all the campuses this summer. And her job is to get 70% of the students vaccinated. And if any of you want to care to question whether or not Olivia can do it, please stand up. I know she's dedicated and she is already excited about starting what she does on Monday. Today, our clinics at our UW sites have administered more than 225,000 vaccines. We had the privilege to work with Dr. Ray and opening up our first clinic up in Green Bay. And I want to thank you, Dr. Ray, for your tremendous leadership. Without you, we would have been possibly not able to succeed like we have. You were great leadership in that regard. I appreciate and I thank you. We also opened up our university to the public. As all of you know, I'm a big believer in expanding the Wisconsin idea. I want everybody in this state to know if you got a problem, where's the best place to turn to? Besides your family, the University of Wisconsin. We're here to help, support, and also to find solutions. We have partnered effectively with healthcare providers throughout the state to help deliver potentially life-saving vaccines. And while the UW system will not mandate, never will, the members of our campus communities to be vaccinated, we will continue to mount a very aggressive campaign to convince people that vaccination is truly the most effective tool we have to get to where we want to be. Get a shot, people. Backs up, masks off is our slogan. As you know, we mobilized our nursing students and pharmaceutical students to get actively involved in the administration of vaccines by offering a tuition rebate as part of our COVID nursing initiative. I'm delighted to be able to report to you, the board, that 1,042 students have taken us up on that offer to date and signed up for our duty. I want the people of Wisconsin to know the new university is there to help. I'm out to build our popularity, not only with the legislature and the governor, but with the people of the state of Wisconsin. I want people to recognize the importance of this great institution. We recently extended this initiative to our nurses and pharmaceutical students throughout the summer. Our priority now is planning for a full in-person university experience this fall. In a short while, we'll hear from 3 chancellors, great chancellors, about their experiences this past year, the lessons they've learned, and how they're preparing for fall. I am incredibly proud of work we've all done, and you, Drew, especially, and the patience and the persistence shown throughout this past year, which has been very, very troublesome. When people talk about Wisconsin being a special place, the University of Wisconsin is a big part of that story. Now turning to the legislative update. The Joint Committee on Finance took up the UW System's 2021-23 budget at its hearing last week. There was a couple big takeaways. Not everything was the way I wanted it, but we did make some success, had some successes. First, the committee's recommendation allowing the tuition freeze to expire, returning tuition setting authority to the Board of Regents. I didn't think that was possible when I started, but throughout the process on the budget, I kept hearing, you know, we really don't trust the University of Wisconsin. We just don't believe that they will do what is right. And I said, that's sort of a bad image. I said, give us an opportunity. They said, if we give you the opportunity, you're going to screw it up. And I said, no, we won't. We'll act with knowledge, patience, and we will make sure that the students are well represented. And this is an incredibly important step because we have to show the legislature that we're going to do it and do it right. We have to restore the power and the accountability to the UW system. For too long, we have been sitting back and taking a lot of criticism, not fighting back, not letting people know how important the university is. And I believe very strongly it's partly the result of efforts now to increase our accountability and transparency is a step, a giant step in the right direction. It is an authority we should have, and it would be a great development in the relationship, hopefully, between the UW system and the legislature. We've done a great deal of work to strengthen these relationships, and I believe we're moving in the right direction. Not as fast as I would like, or I'm sure not as fast as you would like. Not long ago, Roger Roth, chair of the Senate Committee on Higher Ed, and Senator Howard Markline, co-chair of Joint Finance, on separate occasions, came over to Van Nuys. Neither of them have ever been there. We spent several hours together talking about the new university. Something new for them, and I think it's something new for the university. But it's part of growing our mutual understanding and breaking down the terrible barriers that still exist. I'm not saying they're done. They still exist. Second, in previous action, the committee ended the 45 million annual lapse moving forward. Another step forward to giving us a sense of accountability and responsibility. I thanked them for it. I can't imagine what condition we would be in if we had to lapse another $45 million this coming year and another $45 million next year. But that, right now, we're one of the few state agencies that avoided that lapse. The committee also recommended $8.25 million in additional GPR. They asked me, and I told them my bottom line, and it was nowhere around $8.25 million, hell of a lot more. But this was all we were able to get. That figure includes $5 million for one of our great initiatives, which being in Milwaukee, it's very important. And Mark Mone is definitely one of the giants in this field on the Wisconsin Freshwater Collaborative. But all the chancellors are. I've been up to Green Bay and have seen what they're doing on their freshwater research. It's amazing. And also up in Stevens Point. Outstanding. And every one of our graduates got many job offers coming out of the freshwater initiatives that we've already started. And I'm trying to convince the legislature and the public, give us the money. Give us the opportunity to expand. We are the best economic engine the state has. And we can grow and expand and create tremendous opportunities for our students and our people in our state. Of course, I want to remind everybody that this is not the end of the budget process. We expect the committee to take up the capital budget next week. We have, as you know, $1.3 billion in requests. I can't tell you right now. I hear zero. I hear 250 million. I hear 600 million. I hear 800 million. And I have even heard $1 billion. But I will not be satisfied that we get our just share. I'm going to be relentless in advocating on behalf of the University of Wisconsin system. And while I had Howard Merkline over in my office, I knew his wife was a nurse. And I told him about our nursing initiative. And so many of the chancellors have told me that have nursing schools that their faculty is nearing retirement age, or several of them are. And I convinced Howard to put some money in the budget for our nursing initiative. Not enough, but it's a step in the right direction. I have long believed that there's no better investment for the state of Wisconsin than the UW system. When Wisconsin taxpayers invest in the UW system, our universities produce educated, successful graduates who contribute to their communities and to their economy. Just for one example, engineering school at Madison had 900 graduates this spring. Have you got any idea how many job offers were out there for those 900 graduates? 10,000 for our businesses here in Wisconsin. And that's why it is so important to invest into the university. You should also know that I remain firmly committed to introducing legislation this fall to fund the other initiatives that were included in our budget request. These initiatives will help build a Wisconsin that is stronger and even more vibrant, and I'm going to be very tenacious in moving these efforts forward. Finally, in conclusion, a quick couple updates. As noted at our May meeting, our Procure to Pay project, which President Peterson and I worked together on, along with Chancellor Blank, known as SHOP UW+. We successfully launched that on April 16th, one day late. We said it was April 15th, we did it April 16th for all the campuses. A lot of people said it could not be done. It was done. And I'm pleased to report it is already showing dividends and saving money. More than $35 million has already been processed through the new systems to date and has proven easier, faster, more accountable. SHOP UW+ is improving processes and workflows, eliminating a lot of paper transactions and making the accounts payable processes more efficient and transparent across the entire UW system. And that makes the UW system stronger and better. I'm also pleased to report that we will soon be implementing a phased-in return of most UWSA employees to work in the office starting in mid-June. We hope and expect to be close to pre-pandemic levels of in-office work by early July. To do this safely, we're following the guidelines from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as local health departments. I am proud of how employees adapted over the past year to continue to be collaborative and productive while working off-site. But I, for one, am eager to see colleagues face-to-face and not just on screen. Want to see their smiles, want to be able to see them in person. You can see them get the work done. That concludes my report, President Peters. I'll turn the floor back to you.
President Thompson, on behalf of the board, I want to thank Chancellor Mone and his team for their fine hospitality. Our annual visit to UW-Milwaukee always includes new, exciting ideas and activities happening on campus. We're glad to finally be back, and we look forward to hearing and seeing more about the developments at UWM since our last visit. Chancellor Mone, welcome. The floor is yours. Do we have?
Regent President Peterson, thank you. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your support. President Thompson, thank you for your support. I've gone through a little bit of a health challenge, and your support and all of your support during that period has been incredible. And, I went to South Carolina over the weekend to get in shape for you. And I can tell you, the bike riding was great, and I'm ready. So bring the Regents forward. Here I am. So it's been wonderful. And I'm here to tell you today about some things that are happening at Milwaukee. And I'm also going to point out that everything that I'm going to share with you, you could look at each one of our campuses, all of my Chancellor colleagues, as doing incredible things in their respective regions. I just happen to have the fortune to be able to welcome you to the first Regents meeting in person at a host campus since February of 2020, and it's a thrill. I hope you're all able to have a great time. We've been rolling out, looking forward to the hospitality, and I hope you've had everything taken care of to your satisfaction. I've got a lot of special requests, and just keep them coming. We'll make sure that you're taken care of. So with that as background, thank you all, Regents, for your support. And I know how hard it is to listen all day to individuals, so I'm going to try to keep things a little lively. I can take the mask off, and we can use humor a little bit more. It's not always easy to do, I've been finding, as we bring people back to have our masks on. So I'm really happy about this. I'm going to talk about some things that are different today than what you've been hearing. A lot of the focus, not just this afternoon, but in a lot of the meetings, has been a look back, how we've addressed the pandemic, and the successes that we've had. And those are momentous. Those are frankly monumental. They're amazing in terms of what we've done. But I'm going to shift gears, and I'm going to have a couple of premises. I'm going to look ahead, and I'm going to take the perspective that, in fact, we haven't been as disrupted as we have seen changes in higher education actually accelerating many trends that were underway. And I say this because I want to position UW-Milwaukee in a context of why we exist. And I'm going to be perhaps a little provocative, but I'm going to share some things with you that try to answer that question about why we exist and why we merit greater support from the state of Wisconsin, building on the shoulders of Governor Thompson, building on your leadership, your brand ambassadorship, the substantive engagements that you've really led. And we couldn't have a better leader at the time in terms of so many things. So thank you, Governor Thompson, for that. So you've seen the title. The framework that I'll use today will be kind of standard in terms of if you've been at my presentations before. I'd like to put the table of contents out there and talk about where we are today, recognize some of the challenges and opportunities, why we matter, and by extension, why UW system matters, why an investment in this particular campus is such an important investment in Wisconsin, how we're meeting the future head on, and then provide an opportunity for Q&A. So real quickly, UW-Milwaukee today. Many of you know this, but just as a reminder for those of you who do know, and if you're new to this table, in the fall of 2021, we had fall of 2020, I'm sorry, we had almost 25,000 students across 3 campuses. Most of those students come from Wisconsin. The balance are half international, half from other states, predominantly Midwestern states, about 5,400 graduates per year. Why that's important is that we have 200,000 alumni. In the last decade, 25% of them, or 53,000, have graduated in the last decade, and they stay here. Really important point. They stay here. They come from Wisconsin and they stay here for the most part. We have the greatest amount of diversity. I could spend a lot of time on that, and that's going to be an important point later. If you look at the UW System Accountability Dashboard, you'll see that we have about 6,100 students of color. We have the historic, for the last 7 or 8 years, top 25 to top 30 LGBTQ plus campus. We are military silver status. We just attained that in the last few months, up from bronze, and a number of other indicators of diversity in terms of international student, other important dimensions. I would point out, by the way, that the average UW system campus has 1,700 students of color compared to our 6,000, by far the largest number. And this is really important given where we are. The largest metro region, the most diverse campus with an access and research mission, and that's the next points there. We're unique in the state of Wisconsin, both in terms of our mission and how we've achieved that mission in terms of achieving top research status, at the same time being a community engaged status. Let's put some numbers on that. There's 4,700 campuses in the country that contend for Research 1 status. We're one of 131 with Madison. You have 2 in the state. It's pretty heady stuff. There's 335 Carnegie community engaged campuses out of those 4,700. We're one of those. It's pretty rare to have in a metro area this type of accomplishment. And I give our faculty and staff credit for that. The people who've come to Milwaukee and who stay in Milwaukee recognize our unique purposes and why we exist, which is a theme I'm going to come back to over and over. Some things you might not know about UWM. Before the pandemic, 15% of our classes were online. About 10,000 students, including 2,000 full-time. Well, that's pretty heady, but it's also important to know that a number of our programs are nationally top ranked. A lot of degree programs, 40 complete degree programs, a lot of students there. The veterans I've talked about in terms of more than any other, in fact, in the 6 state surrounding region, there's no campus that has as many students, 1,100 military veterans. Some of our programs, one that I taught in for over 20 years, have 40 to 45% of the entire program, the executive MBA program, 40 to 45% military veterans. Pretty amazing work there. And it's not just about quantity and quality. We're the largest nursing program in the state of Wisconsin, but also it's about the quality. U.S. News and World Reports for all campuses across the country puts our doctoral program in the top 9%, our master's program in the top 12%. Governor Thompson talked about the retirement that's happening in nursing across the state of Wisconsin. We're already thousands of nurses short. Some estimate over 9,000 nurses short in the state today. One of the largest, most chronic issues that we're facing in terms of talent shortages. But the bigger issue is who's going to educate future nurses with all the nurses retiring. That's why the support from the state government is so important. So again, it's quantity and quality. The only American Sign Language program in the state of Wisconsin, film. Top 4%. There's 50 programs in the top 4% out of 1,350 in the world, and we're in that top 4%. I'm going to come back to this point later on because it's not just about 4%. It's not just one of the fastest growing majors on our campus. But what's interesting is that a few years ago, the Milwaukee Film Institute did a study, commissioned a study, and they found that the employment in film in Wisconsin is 5 times larger than that of guess which industry, which we're known for? Brewing. Phenomenal. And the growth rate, guess what it is relative to other industries? It's outgrowing by a 2 to 1. It's twice the employment rate and growth. It's pretty phenomenal. And the point I'm making about this is if you look at the proprietorship, if you look at the creativity and the work that's happening, a lot of it is based on UW-Milwaukee graduates. So it's not just filling a talent pipeline, it's actually creating industry. And that's a point I'm going to come back to over and over again because it's critical when you look at regional impact and you talk about what are the growth sectors. Go to the San Francisco Bay Area, go to Boston, go to Austin. And what's the heart of it? It's around industry and research, university collaborations. And collaboration is going to be a critically important theme in the conversation today. That's what's essential. So I just came back from Greenville, as I mentioned, South Carolina. And you want to talk about a lot of partnerships where you've got industry and education working together in very powerful ways, and it's an upward virtuous cycle. We've talked about Freshwater Collaborative. Governor Thompson and others today have talked a lot about this. The only dedicated school, I'd love to have you all there. I want to take you out on the Aging Niske to help me build support for the new research vessel. We have great fundraising along the way, but a little state or federal support would, of course, get it over the hump. So that's background. And I talked earlier about, I'm going to ask this question, why should you care about the foundation that I've laid? Why should you care? It's impressive and helpful, but that's all just background. Let's talk about the unfortunate, significant challenges that face this region and frankly, the state. And I'm going to link Milwaukee to the state all the time throughout this because like a family, we're only as strong as our least strong member. You're only as happy in a family as your least happy family member. That metaphor is very powerful. Many people have said, whether it's elected officials, business leaders, and others, as goes Milwaukee, so goes the state. And I will point out, as UWM goes, so goes Milwaukee in the larger region. And I'm going to make a case for that. So I'm going to make a lot of assertions and claims, and I can tell you I can back everything that I say up with data. I'm going to throw different points at you, and I'm going to back them up with data. Let's talk about the challenges and opportunities. So I like to situate why we exist in the context of, well, what's the environment? My background, as many of you know, is around strategic planning and managing organizations and leadership. And I look at, well, what are we facing? Opportunities and challenges, disparities. On the picture on the left-hand side, you see some colors, and they show on the north side of Milwaukee, largely African-American population. On the south side, largely Latinx, Hispanic, surrounded by a lot of the other populations, white and Asian primarily. The stats on the right-hand side come from some work that's been done, and primarily from Mark Levine that was cited in some of the earlier work in some of the committee reports today. And what you can see, working from the bottom up, third highest rate of Black incarceration. These are headlines that you've seen. It's not a lot of surprises. But let's put a number on that. It's 10 times the incarceration rate if you're white. Just to put that into reality, it kind of puts it in perspective. Among the worst Black infant mortality rates, we've bounced between 1, 2, and 3 for the last 20 years. Second lowest Black home ownership. That's been getting a lot of traction lately. If you're at the READY committee meeting this morning, you heard one of the things we're doing with our Northwestern Mutual Data Science Institute is focusing with MGIC on helping address that issue, putting a national center together to increase and address minority home ownership in this region, and then help with that nationally. I want to zero in just for a moment on that next one, working up. The ability of low-income Black youth to climb the economic ladder. What Mark Levine and others' research shows is that if you're born poor and Black in Milwaukee, by the time you get to your adult, early earning years, you're at 80%. You're 80% less of your white counterpart. Let's put that in perspectives. You graduate from one of our great institutions in the state of Wisconsin in your 20s, you make $50,000. That's pretty good for starting income. If you're born Black in Milwaukee, the same trajectory, most of our colleagues are earning $10,000. Try making a living on those types of incomes. That's the challenges that we face. Now, why is that? Let's flip to the other side and look at data from the Hispanic Collaborative, which is part of Milwaukee Metro Association of Commerce. This is a slide from that deck. And you see 80% of the workforce is in 4 industries. Look at the middle column. You see where all those people are. Those are the 4 industries. They're all under $40,000 a year. In fact, a lot of those are in $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year types of occupations. Go to the far right, adjacent to those top 4 occupations, and this is the sad challenge. The demand is incredibly low. So some of these industries are probably not looking good for the future. I'm going to come back to the point in this slide because I'm going to talk about how we are addressing each one of these areas, but I'm just planting the seed right now. The Hispanic Collaborative, in conjunction with the work that we're doing with many community groups in the African American population in Milwaukee, are taking this challenge head on. And we're looking at this and we're saying we've got to use, guess what? Education as the pathway to address this issue. If you look at the occupations down below, where there's very little Hispanic or African American representation, we don't begin to have enough individuals in the high demand, high paid jobs. The path to that is typically a 2- and 4-year education degree. Other disparities, wrapping it up. On the left-hand side, you've got the Hispanic Wellbeing Index. On the right-hand side, you've got the African American Wellbeing Index. Look at the bottom. On the left-hand side, Milwaukee, 44th, African American, 50th. Here's a sad reality. In 2017, when this index first was created, Milwaukee on the Hispanic Index was 39th. It has dropped in 2020 to 44th. The new data will come out in 2022, and I can almost guarantee you we're not going to have climbed up. We're not going the right way. These indices, by the way, when we talk about well-being, there's 20 variables, and they include income, wealth, employment, and health, the big outcomes. Now, here straight from MMAC, another data point. And this says, okay, let's look at this in terms of prosperity rankings. On the left-hand side, you have Milwaukee, number 6. For white population. We're number 6. We're doing pretty well out of 20 or 21 metro regions across the country. But then if you look at African American and Hispanic, again, at the very bottom. This isn't like, I'm not clipping data here. It's not like there's 40 cities below this. This is 21 out of 21. That's the challenge that we're facing. So when we talk about disparities, here's another opportunity and challenge, depending on if you're an employer or an employee, depending on how you look at this. Talent availability. The theme across these 3 headlines is one word: shortage. That's the chronic issue. Even at the bottom, MMAC has an initiative called the Region of Choice. And that basically says if you're a member of that, of which we are, by 2025, we are going to increase our leadership of color by 25%, wherever you were, at the 2020 benchmark. We're going to increase that. So we're doing this at UWM, and we're going to have 15% more talent of color overall, again, from our 2020 baseline. Well, that's great, but where are you going to get that talent? Circle back to what I said at the beginning. Who's got the largest diverse student population in the state of Wisconsin? It's right here. So we're an important part of that answer already. Again, I'm not even getting to the answer parts, but I'm showing you it's the challenge that we're facing. Education inequities. Earlier in the day, the phrase, the system is broken, was used 2 times in the Education Committee. And I'm going to come back and point that out. You can talk about whether it's funding or you can talk about other areas, but we see continuing inequities. You may or may not know that Wisconsin has the greatest education gap. And I'm not talking about Milwaukee or Metro 7 now. I'm talking about the state of Wisconsin. Look at the math and reading scores in rural counties across this state. Look at STEM education across this state. And I can tell you, we do not have, talk to superintendents and they will tell you, we do not have enough STEM educators. And it's a real challenge and it shows up in the test scores. It's a significant issue. Let me show you some data in the M7 region. This you may have seen before. I've used this. I chair the Higher Ed Regional Alliance. We put this data together for the M7 region. I'll talk about Higher Ed Regional Alliance if you're in the READY committee. I talked a little bit about that. But here's the average. It's not so easy to read. Just look at the numbers at the top. I'm sorry, the figures of young men and women. Take an average high school class. This is not just Milwaukee. This is the 7 counties, aggregating across the 7 counties. And here's what you see. Take 20 high school freshmen. 17 of them are going to graduate from high school. That's pretty good. The challenge is there's some yield or drop-off rate. Only 12 start college in the fall, 2-year or 4-year. And here's the sad challenge, and I'm going to tell you the saddest in a moment. The sad part is that 6 years later, only 5 of those students will have graduated from either a 2 or 4-year institution. But if you're black or brown, only 1, at most 2 of those students will be of color. That's the saddest part. We are simply not putting enough people of color successfully through our education system. Now, it doesn't just happen in college. It actually starts in early childhood education. And that's why the Milwaukee Succeeds partnership, of which we're one of the primary partners, is focusing on 2 things: African-American male high school students, as well as early childhood education. It's that simple. Those are 2 critical variables. So those are important things. Competitiveness. Here's a huge opportunity for the region. Look at what CEOs are saying. Look at what leadership in this region is saying. We have been facing headwinds, but we've been facing headwinds for quite a while. Tight labor market, forced innovation. Are we going to rebound? Well, our manufacturing leaders, the CEOs, what are they saying? The challenge that's holding them back is not the demand, it's meeting the demand by overcoming supply chain issues. Are we innovating? Are we creating enough supply? Water, we've talked about a lot, but look at the headlines and you see these themes that come through. Part of it's inequities, but it's also huge opportunities, especially with a state like Wisconsin, which on the one hand has this great resource, but also has an industry and a history based on water in terms of industry, in terms of tourism, agriculture, so many different areas that the Freshwater Collaborative is looking at in terms of resolving freshwater issues. But it's more than just equity. It's more than just the lead pipe issues, lead in pipes and so forth. It's the politics and things like that. Again, these are just the areas that are out there. And finally, health inequities. And I do use that word deliberately in this area. Sometimes it's the veterans that are not getting treated well. Sometimes it's the elderly. Sometimes it's around racial issues and others. But there's a lot of significant inequities that are occurring. So let's stand back for just a moment from those challenges and point out they're bigger. Those challenges that I've just gone through are opportunities, if you're the optimist. They're much bigger than what any one institution can address. They're also not unique to just Milwaukee. Many of them are state and frankly regional or national. They require 3 things to address them. Number 1, they need partnerships that are bigger than any of us. And so what you're going to hear about today and what you've been seeing in all our presentations and committee meetings so far is where we are engaging. It's a personality issue that we have. It's one to collaborate. It's one to work on issues, much like Governor Thompson always says, when we see problems, we want to solve them. And that's what we've got a history of doing. So it's about careful cultivation of partnerships. Second, you got to put your money in this and you got to put your people and your time and effort If you don't do that, you shouldn't be at the table, is how we look at it. And so we're in those places where we can really make a difference. And then we've got devoted, committed leaders. And I can tell you that when I say leaders, it's leaders at all levels. It's not just leadership from people who you've heard presenting. It's our faculty, it's our staff. It's why people came to Milwaukee, but more importantly, why they are staying. And I would put a metric on this. A number of us talk about this from time to time. And we think we've got about 80% of our faculty and staff who are the long haulers who have been here, that are dedicated to making a difference in an urban environment. We are fully engaged. You do not become a Carnegie committed and community engaged university without that kind of wherewithal. So that's what we're doing. How are we doing it? In the context of why, let me talk about why we exist. Let me talk about how we hit these issues head on. Disparities in education. These are just a few. Just like I'm telling you, every campus in this room could talk about how they're meeting the needs. This just scratches the surface. There's so many other things that are happening in the community, what we're doing. But here's 4 top level ones. With Parkside and Debbie Ford's leadership, who really helped bring us together, you can see this moonshot for equity in the top right. This is a substantial initiative that's called Moonshot for Equity for a reason. Those challenges that I pointed out earlier, UW-Parkside, UW-Milwaukee, Carthage College, and MATC have stood up and said, by 2030, we're not just going to reduce that gap by 3 or 5 or 12%. We're going to eliminate it. There will be, from our institutions, no difference. No matter what your background is, you're going to come to our campus and you're going to succeed. You're going to graduate and you're going to have paychecks waiting for you. That's the Moonshot for Equity. We're the first region in the nation to take that on head on. On the the top left, Higher Ed Regional Alliance, HERA. Some of you have heard me talk about it. It could have been RIA for the regional higher ed, but if you study your Greek mythology, you know that HERA was more powerful, but she was also about love and unity and bringing people and things together. So we like that, and there's 3 key goals. Number 1, college completion. Again, I salute Chancellor Ford and President Martin of MATC, who have led the completion goal. College completion goal is the foundation. Let's focus on students. Let's get them through. And we have made a measurable difference across the M7 region. Second goal is, how do you get college campuses working better together? We have the presidents and chancellors of every single 2-year, 4-year higher ed institution in the M7 region, representing over 150,000 students that are all on board, and they're all committed to working together. So we've adopted, before the state of Wisconsin, before the technical college system did, we adopted transferology. We said, we're the tail that can wag the bigger dog. And that's what we've been driving. Partnerships around badging, around online certificate programs, a lot of different energy. Third, employer linkages. Employer linkages are critical. It's not just to graduate students, it's to get them into employment, it's to get them into meaningful occupational careers. Go back to the challenges that I presented earlier. We've got to get students into occupations over $40,000. This is a chronic issue. Listen to most business leaders, and this is the biggest issue facing them. We're leaving too many people behind. So those are 2 big ones. Milwaukee Anchor Collaborative, we call this EDS and MEDS. The 5 biggest healthcare providers that include many of you who are in this room. Regent Grebe, I think about the importance of your organization and the 6 others that are part of this. We collectively spend billions of dollars, these 7 organizations, literally in terms of our procurement. But guess how much we spend in the Milwaukee area? It's pathetic. It's less than 1% of that spend in the certain zip codes that we're trying to revitalize. But employment, we're doing better. But those are the 2 goals: how much we buy and how much we hire from specific zip codes in this area. So this is a really important initiative to focus on that. Again, we've got the largest education and largest medical providers. And then, of course, M-Cubed, you've heard me talk about. You've heard me bring in superintendents of MPS and MATC, the president, both who happen to be Panthers, by the way, today, as we think about those institutions. And they're incredible in terms of the commitment that we've made 7 years ago to increase the talent pipeline, increase the number of students going from MPS to UWM this in any particular fall. So I'd like to share with you a young man who was our commencement speaker this year. His name is Darian Dixon. He graduated from the high school that's closest to us, Riverside High School. and he works as on the lead team for the Mars rover work. He's sending a lot of those images back to Earth. So getting him on tape is actually quite difficult because he's on Mars time. And that's everything that they're doing on this Endeavor exploration. So with that as background, why don't we hear from Darian about what UWM does?
Hello, everyone. Hi to the Board of Regents. Thank you, Chancellor Mark Mone, for allowing me to speak briefly here. Yeah, I know it's not live, but it's awesome to be able to speak here and represent UWM, and excited and happy to do it. I've been thinking a lot lately about my time at UWM because I did the spring commencement speech recently, and some interviews and events with UWM recently with the landing of the Perseverance rover, and thinking a lot about UWM and my time there. I don't think I would be where I am today without the education I received at UWM. Life is a labyrinth of doors and windows and opportunities, and every decision you make and place you go impacts where you end up. And the amount of opportunities I got at UWM via the geosciences department, the amount of great connections that I made, friends that I made, awesome experiences I had with campus employment there, being a peer mentor and a campus ambassador for others. Just so much of that really culminated into this journey, really. I do not think I would be working on Mars rovers at all without my time at UWM. And for that, I'm immensely grateful. And for me, growing up in Milwaukee, UWM always seemed like such a big fixture in the community. My mom went to UWM. My uncle went to UWM. Lots of family friends went to UWM. So as a kid, I always was exposed to UWM and thought highly of it. And it's honestly like full circle that I ended up a UWM grad and attended there and had such a great experience there. And I'm truly grateful to the university. Being African American from Milwaukee, there's a reality that sometimes we don't always have the same opportunities academically, financially. Milwaukee can be a tough place to grow up, and I definitely had some experiences that were rough. And to have such a big university in such a large, diverse city, serving such a large, diverse population is honestly fantastic. The ability to go to UWM for me and for several of my peers and friends I know really did change the circumstances of our lives. And that's something we'll always be very, very happy about and very proud of. It's kind of funny, I actually didn't attend UWM as my first university. I came out of high school and had this idea in my head that, I got to get out of Milwaukee, I got to leave home. And I went to a very small private school in Chicago, which I did enjoy, but I would come visit home a lot. I was really homesick, and I would come see my friends and hang out. And what struck me anytime I hung out with them, because so many of them went to UWM, was just like, it was a really bustling and diverse campus with so much going on. And, people wore yellow, people wore their school colors. There was like school pride. We didn't really have that at the tiny school I was at. And I thought about coming home and looked into UWM and was just blown away by the amount of academic programs there were. I wasn't really set on the major I was doing at the time, but at such a small school, there wasn't a lot to pick from. And I'm looking at UWM on the website. I'm like, is this what college is like? There's this many things to choose from. So it became easy for me to make the decision to move back home and go to UWM after saying, I don't want to live in Milwaukee. I don't ever want to be home anymore. And UWM gave me a great education, allowed me to change my major to geosciences, which got me to where I am now, but also really changed my perspective of my hometown. I had that mentality that lots of people have, that their hometown sucks and they want to leave. And then I went to UWM, and now I'm like the most pro Milwaukee person ever. So I think UWM is just a fantastic place. And it's awesome to be able to just say great words about a great institution here. And happy and grateful to do it, and happy and grateful for everything UWM in my life.
Well, thank you, Darian. That was pretty neat, and we were thrilled. And you can imagine if you see the youth today that wear NASA shirts, you can imagine how well received he was as a commencement speaker, even virtually. The comments that we've heard, and he tells a story in his commencement speech where his mother, who was his single parent, sat him down on the bed one day and said, "See these 2 pennies?" He said, "Yeah, that's all we have." They were that impoverished. She said, "I don't know how we're going to make it, but I have belief." And that was the theme, belief in himself and belief. It's just incredibly inspiring. It's one of the best commencement addresses we've had. So a really wonderful young man, and we're just so proud of Darian. He talked about something that we're proud of, and it's the number of academic programs and the choices, as well as the quality of those programs. And this slide speaks to that. So this is the transition to how we meet what I mentioned earlier was the shortages, the shortcomings, the inability to meet the talent. You heard from President Thompson about the number of offers, the opportunities at the Madison Engineering Program. Let me just give you a snapshot of something that we've been tracking for several years now. And you can't read all of the data, but I'm just going to kind of walk you through what's on the top and what's on the bottom. The top is the types of fields. There's 4 buckets here. Those 4 buckets represent the fastest growing and highest demand job professions, occupations in the state of Wisconsin. 4 buckets. And you can see health and human services, business, computer science, engineering science, related fields. Those are the 4 fastest growing. They also happen to be the ones where pay, not surprisingly, is quite correlated. These are good jobs. At the bottom, here's what we deliver. So I presented this to Joint Finance, I presented this to WEDC and a lot of employer groups because this is so important. The bottom line is that 86% of UW-Milwaukee graduates go into these 4 buckets. And the data, the types of majors, you can see over 2,000 graduates in healthcare. Every year, remember that stat I pointed out earlier? 53 to 5,500 students every year. Think about the injection into the talent pipeline, a diverse talent pipeline coming out of UW-Milwaukee that goes into healthcare, business, and so forth. So you can see this, and you'll have access to the slides and see the actual reporting. But it's pretty impressive, and it's an argument from to the legislature in terms of why our campuses need additional support. Competitiveness, how are we addressing this? How are we addressing the real needs of industry, of employers, and the sectors? Well, I won't go through each one of these. You've heard in previous Ready and other Regent presentations, but think about these 4 areas alone. And again, I could share with you a dozen centers and institutes, if not more. Lubar Entrepreneurship Center, which you've been in before if you've been a Regent for long. Tech Ed Frontiers, we talked about at the Ready Committee meeting this morning. Connected Systems Institute, you'll hear on the tour later tonight, and our NM Data Science Institute. These things have certain things in common. They're focused on the future. They're focused on giving students the skills that they need to create industries or to help existing industries. They're research-based, but they represent, importantly, powerful partnerships. And I talked again about that in our DNA. This really helps prepare the region, the state, and frankly, the world for the future. Water, it's not just our involvement with Freshwater Collaborative. There's a lot of other things our faculty are doing. Top left, Helen Meyer. She's a professor in our Zilber School of Public Health. And she's looking at the unfortunate realities of guess where most of the lead pipe issues occur. Remember those zones that I pointed out earlier? The different color where you have the large populations on the south side of Hispanic, the north side, the Black population. That's exactly where we have, and her research shows this and shows, unfortunately, what happens to, even at early education, just the challenging physiological effects of lead water and lead in the water, lead in the pipes. On the right-hand side, you've heard about Professor Sandra McClellan before. Several of you as Regents have participated in our Salon series where she was featured talking about her research, setting the stage for national leading institutions to participate with her research, finding early detection of COVID in wastewater and helping identify outbreaks long before people knew they were going to occur. That's just one example. almost single-handedly, her research restored Bradford Beach while you're here in Milwaukee. If you go down Bradford Beach, I can tell you 15 years ago, nobody went to Bradford Beach. Today, it is one of the top 10 beaches in the United States because of her research that helped figure out it's not just the stormwater and it's not just the wastewater that pollutes the lake that creates the problems that we were having with the pollution, but in fact, it's a lot of the bird scat. And so Pooch Patrol came in, and this is the groundbreaking kind of stuff. And of course, in the middle, you're all hearing, unfortunately, too much about PFAS, the man-made chemicals, the forever chemicals. These are too pervasive in our lives, and we've got researchers that are finding ways to detect them and really help discover the kind of work there. And I'm purposely not spending a lot of time on the Freshwater Collaborative because we've heard about this, and we do hear about it in every education committee. We're thrilled to have initial funding for it. It's not enough relative to what we've asked for. We want, as you know, $9 million in each of the 2-year biennial budgets. Getting the base of $2.5 million is a great start. And then finally, what we're doing with health inequities. I could share with you, we could talk all afternoon about the headlines, the types of substantive partnerships that we're doing with the medical college, working on mental health nurse practitioner residency programs, working on how you can have intelligent wound treatment, smart bandages, smart wound treatment. On the right-hand side, this young man heard about the work that our faculty are doing, and he wanted to make a difference. He jumped in, helping with, from the youth perspective, looking at the differential impact from an equity perspective regarding opioids, what the treatment plans are. So as I round a corner on this, I want to pull some of these threads together and make this point and argue that this investment that we continually seek support for, your support, what you've been doing, the types of things that we ask for all the time from the legislature, why we've met with over 60 legislators in the last month and a half, why I'm meeting with Senator Kuinga tomorrow, why I will continue this push like many of you are doing, is to make a strong statement for the state of Wisconsin. The more support we have, the more we can do. I'll share with you some data in a moment on this, but I want to really put this together. It's the talent pipeline is one front and center, which would be expected, but it's also how we solve problems through research, the types of things where we create industries in film, we strengthen the work in water, we take a look at manufacturing and we say manufacturing of the 1930s, 70s, or early 2000s is not going to keep us competitive in a global world. Redundant global world. Okay, we have to really think through this in both the creative and maintenance and strengthening side, the entrepreneurial work. So these are areas that are important, but there's also the moral imperative to help our Black and brown communities be on a par with all the other communities that we have in our state. So building on this, what do we do for the region and state? I won't go through all of these, but just take a quick look, top 3 on the left-hand side. You could say this for all of my chancellor colleagues across the state. Our graduates have greater social mobility. They have employment opportunities, earnings, and home ownership. On the right-hand side, for communities and society, this isn't just for the individual. In fact, here's the data I want to share with you. Just a report that just came out. If you were hearing from Vice Chancellor Van Harpen this morning in Business and Finance, she talked about some information from this report from the state higher ed education executive officers. And this is a review of all the relevant literature and also some simulation modeling. And there's 3 takeaways. Number 1, the benefits to the state and to our communities far exceeds the benefits to individuals. So I sometimes have discussions with legislators and they say, why should we ask a taxpayer who doesn't have a degree to support the students who are getting degrees? Because those students are going to make a lot more money. Why should we help them? The number 1 answer is, guess why? Your communities have higher tax bases. You have much stronger economic development with higher education. You can go through a number of arguments, but the data are incredibly compelling for you're making an investment in the state. And if you have further questions about that, look at states that are strong in terms of the regional economy, and their education levels are generally considerably higher than the state of Wisconsin. So that's number 1. Number 2, if we want to meet employer needs, think about whether it's WMC, MMAC, think about your local chambers. What are they telling you? every single CEO. I wrote an article as the chair of Higher Ed Regional Alliance, and I said, ask 9 out of 10 CEOs what their number one problem is. It's about talent. It's about having the right talent at the right time. People like the article, and I got a lot of positives, but I get these side comments. So who was that one CEO who said talent isn't the number one issue? I mean, it's that chronic. It's that vexing. We're not going to fix the talent pipeline if we continue on the trend that the state of Wisconsin has been on. For the last 11 years, we have had a disinvestment, and I can show you the data that shows you the trend line relative to other regional public universities in the country. Our trend line has been significantly challenged. So number 3, this is the big one, back to Milwaukee in particular in this region. If we want to close equity gaps and address the real vexing issues that I've laid out at the beginning, state support is the biggest thing we can do to increase that. In other words, we cannot do it alone. We had a record campaign, capital campaign. Many of you came over and helped us celebrate a year and a half ago. It was wonderful to receive $250 million. That is not enough. We're going to have an announcement in the next day or two about a huge gift, and it's $5.75 million, and it's focused on scholarships. It's from the Freighter Trust. It's for scholarships specifically for people from Milwaukee and primarily disadvantaged, historically underrepresented in healthcare professions. It's really neat. MATC is getting 5.75, so together, over $11.5 million for MATC and UWM. This is powerful, but I can tell you it is not enough. It will not scratch the surface. So look at it the other way around. So if there were no UWM, a prominent CEO in this region said, if UWM didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. We're putting over 5,000 students a year into the talent pipeline. He actually employed over 6,000 of our students over many years. The saw cuts both ways. That's the point why I put the red on the slide deck. The saw cuts both ways is an important point. If you invest and you have prosperity, great. But if you don't invest, you're on the downward spiral. And we're all spiraling. And the question is, are we spiraling up or are we spiraling down? And if we don't have greater investments, we will not have these types of outcomes. So you know this, but to reinforce it, what we want to do and have been doing is addressing and solving the needs. We're fixing problems. To do it regionally and across the state, here's what we need. GPR, we're underfunded, and I make that argument, I think, on that side of the room. Every single one of my colleagues would join me in saying that. It's a necessity. The accessibility for more Wisconsinites is critical, and then support for freshwater collaborators. So those are the things that we're going at the legislators head on talking about. And then, of course, on the capital budget, the obsolescence of our buildings. While we have been identified as UW-Milwaukee starting in 1956, as you can see from the logo on either side of the room, the history of this campus actually goes back to 1849, and the buildings are even this one, which we got support for $40 million. You will not see anything that really addresses much of the actual needs. It's more renovation, HVAC types of things. So the types of projects that are on our current budget and recent budgets include things you've heard about, you've supported these, so I won't go through them in any detail other than just to mention them. The Northwest Quad, that's the old Columbia St. Mary's, and that's front and center, our number one request for the legislature today. Chemistry building, we're breaking ground soon. Sandburg residence halls, we need some more help to finish those. And then for the new boat, we need a better dock wall, but even for the existing boat. So this is an $8 million project, the smallest of those that are mentioned. Now, what are we doing? What are we doing to merit further investment? Many of you heard in the Education Committee, our provost and team talk a little bit about the work that we're doing on 2030. We commissioned a group back in 2019. We saw the trends that were heading our way, the fact that we're in a quite disrupted world, and we put together a team that actually had over 100 people called Think Tank 2030, and we've generated through a lot of work, a 175-page report that recognizes that the pandemic really accelerated a lot of things. Higher ed has been disrupted, so no surprise to you. These are trends that you might have seen some of the data in reports earlier today. We're running out of teenagers, I oftentimes will say. That's the reality demographically. But we also have lesser funding. And these are just two of the big challenges. There's many, many other areas as well. So we put together a blueprint, and it's got 8 priorities. The student centricity in revising the curriculum to both help students get through faster and to have a radically welcoming orientation. The inclusion and diversity, which we have been doing, and we've been on a tear since I've been in this role since 2014 to magnify our support on that. Aligning and engaging the workforce, not just the academic side, but our entire employee base. Provost has talked about the reorganization. So we built a campus going back to the 50s and 60s, around 15 schools and colleges. What is the right number? What's the right way to do that? We're actually consolidating, and by this fall, I suspect we'll have the tracks laid for a considerably more focused, smaller number of schools and colleges for efficiencies and effectiveness. The research infrastructure, not just to maintain, but to strengthen and build. And then finally, second to the last, updating the budget model to support this work, and then growing our endowment. From today, 206 million, we want to grow that endowment to 500 million. So that's the focus of our next campaign. So in summary, pulling the final thoughts here together, we have a unique responsibility in the state. We own it. So it's not just words on paper. It's not just in the charter and the mission of the literally and you know the way that UW system is built. We own this. We're the largest economic hub in the state, in Milwaukee. And we, I hope, have shown you that we respond innovatively. We have put a lot of our effort into the issues to solve issues around employment, education, economic development, public health, water, and beyond. We're really in this community to make a difference. We can be much more effective if we have greater support, and in particular for our Black and Brown communities, which have been, unfortunately, left behind in so many different ways. These are our areas that we focus on, and we want to make up for some of the lost ground that has happened. We want to help the state bounce back and be strong. To do that, we need your help. We can't do it on the resources that we have. I don't know if we'll be able to continue at the levels that we have, honestly, in terms of the budget cuts that we've had to. And it's not just because of the pandemic. But it's your support, your political persuasion, your influence, your advocacy that have made a big difference. So on a final note, just at a personal level, this was not an ordinary year for any of us. For us at the system level, for you as Regents, at our campus, and certainly for me personally, given what I've gone through. I had my 32nd anniversary at UWM this year. In fact, I'm just finishing it. And I like to joke, I look forward to the next 32. I just don't know if they'll all be here. With that said, I do love this campus, and I think you know I love Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin. I'm convinced, and many individuals, and I'm glad to say so many of you are with me on this, know how important we are. And I say that about Milwaukee. I say that about all of our UW system campuses in terms of what we represent in our respective regions, what we represent to the state. And it's with your help, your continued support, that we can really make a difference. We can take these initiatives, be explicit, own them, and really make a committed difference. And we'll help the state of Wisconsin in a much greater way than what we've done before. So thank you for your engagement. I know how hard it is to listen to, my goodness, it's another afternoon speaker after lunch, but you've really been engaged. And I'm so grateful for your support. Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them and if time allows. Regent Peterson.
Thank you, Chancellor Mone. Excellent, passionate, as usual. Glad to have you back. Thanks for hosting us. Questions of Regents for Chancellor Mone. Regent Clyde.
Thank you, Chancellor Mone. Always, as Regent Peterson, Chair Peterson said, always a pleasure to have you here. I think I speak from the heart from those who are from the Milwaukee region and from the business community about how vitally important what you are doing is for the UW system and for Milwaukee specifically. I've come to believe that the UW system is the greatest way that we can impact the economy of this state. I think I always knew it, but I think sitting on this board now for 5 years, I see the Wisconsin idea in action, all of our campuses, but I see it very personally in action in Milwaukee. We don't feature the Freshwater Collaborative every month at the Education Committee because it's all about just fresh water. It's because the collaborative idea was hard. It's hard fought. It's hard, and it's exactly where our system needs to be. The partnership component is huge, and it allows us to be more efficient, to deliver a product that is better and competes nationally. And what you've done on the achievement gap, I mean, I've been with you and I've watched, and that's hard work. And it's the most important work that I believe we can do as the system is to close that gap. I was horrified when I joined this board. I realized that certain kids, if they don't have the right preparation, will spend, 6 years in college rather than 4. And think about the ability to graduate, the ability to, the amount you have to pay in extra tuition. You get tired, you leave. You guys put the work in to try to get at that. So there were co-requisites and people didn't spend 6 years in college, that they were brought up to the ability to compete in the classwork quickly and efficiently. And I've watched that, and it's hard work, putting all these partnerships together, hard work. And to me, we heard Tim Sheehy about maybe a year ago or before COVID talking about this important thing for Milwaukee. And so for me, it's heartfelt, and it's a moral imperative, but it's more than that. It's an economic imperative for our state. I think I always say, and maybe this is too shorthand, and Drew will probably kill me for saying it, but I always say, let Madison be Madison and put funds into Milwaukee if you're trying to actually propel the economic environment of this state. And so anything we can do to help, anything we can do to propel these initiatives, I stand ready to support you and your campus, because I think this is so incredibly important. So thank you.
Thank you, Regent Klein. And I appreciate you being on the journey with us. You've seen what we're doing. It's not an overnight change. These are issues that have been in place for decades, and we want to accelerate how quickly we can address them. And it's about substantive change, meeting students where they are, but it's also about cultural change. And that's a really important component that we've been working on. And I'm really happy to say it's an easy sell on this campus, but it is changing behaviors. And that's what we're quite excited about. And we're going to make a bigger difference than what we've made in the past, even if our footprint is a little bit reduced on the budgetary front. Thank you.
Regent Bechtel, then Regent Cologne.
Thank you for that presentation, Chancellor Mone. And I want to build on my colleague Regent Klein's comment about investment and support that we can give as Regents to UWM and also our friends in the state legislature. So one of your colleagues today during Business and Finance Committee, Mark, went through a couple of key charts for us. And for instance, when we look at low income undergrads, your student body is almost at 35% of your student body is low income undergrads. When you look at the GPR per student, you drop down, you're below Madison, and you're just about where the comprehensives are at about $6,200 or something like that. So your GPR to student ratio is probably below where it should be. Your tuition is a little above the comprehensives, a little behind Madison, a little shy of $10,000. Then the average unmet financial need. So again, we've got a high density of low-income undergrads facing tuition, facing a lower GPR per student dollar figure, and therefore the average unmet financial need runs at about a $10,000 burn rate per student. So what we're doing as a system, what we're doing here at UWM, not by anyone's intention, I'm sure, is that we are taking low-income undergrads, having them go through this system, and we are saddling them with what? A higher debt ratio than probably our other campuses. What can we do, and maybe this is an ongoing discussion, but what can we do as regents to improve that picture? Because I agree, Regent Klein, there's a moral imperative There's an economic justice, there's an economic talent pipeline type of issue that's all running through here. So what can we do as regents? What could we ask of our friends in the legislature to not continue on this path? Is my question clear?
Very clear. And I think the answer with respect to, UW as a system, and I want to be very respectful as I say this, I think if we could find extraordinary investment, let me give you an example. In the state of Ohio, Cleveland State today is receiving an additional $20 to $30 million. It's not a reallocation from other schools. And I want to be very respectful. We have a pie. And so the easy answer would be, well, give Milwaukee more, right? I mean, but I want to be respectful of the incredible things that are happening in every campus that really does have a set formula. Can we get an additional investment? In the state of Ohio, they have said for Cleveland State, that is where they have the largest number of students of color, and they have a proven track record of having been able to get students through and graduated into careers. That's an example. Washington State had another approach where they looked at where they went to the highest paid occupations, and they said, these are, my goodness, in the GAFAM companies, if you're familiar with that acronym, that's the Google, Amazon, Facebook, so the high-tech companies, including Microsoft. I can't forget Microsoft with my star alum, Satya Nadella there.
We're always thinking about it.
So these companies went to the state, and they went to the governor and the legislature, and they said, we will take on a higher tax burden if you will take that money and funnel it into STEM fields and those that are going to help our tech sectors. Let's look at that type of thing and talk about how we can help invest in the University of Wisconsin, and then look at, and this is, in a similar vein, Governor Thompson has been arguing for the expansion of the Promise type of funding. If we could get that, that's going to help all our students, particularly those that are underrepresented. So those are some quick examples of things that I think are yes pluses. They don't take away from anything that we've currently got, but boy, if we could get some specific initiatives. And to your point, Regent Bechtel, this isn't an answer and a solution today. It's going to take a lot of conversation. It's going to take some compelling arguments that I think can be made very effectively. If we look at other states, independent of politics, this is what's the right thing to do for building strong economic muscle, for really building the talent, for building industry and so forth. So I love your question. Thank you.
And then Regent Weatherly, and I believe Regent Walsh.
Thank you, President Peterson, and thank you, Chancellor Mone, for your great presentation, the great work that you're doing in Milwaukee, and the benefits that your good work has on the rest of the state. I also want to echo my colleagues about believing that Milwaukee is the economic engine of the state. When you do well, when Milwaukee does well, the rest of the state is going to benefit. So an investment in Milwaukee is an investment in the state. I want to echo that. Also want to say that I just want to ask you about your vision and desire to become a Hispanic Institute. What do you believe are the benefits there, and what are the resources you need to make that happen?
Thank you. Great question, Regent Colon. First and foremost, it's the growth of the state. It's the smart thing to do because of where our students are at in terms of the demographics. We've got a wonderfully growing population, and why would we not want to serve more students? And you can also see from my data the challenge. And so I work with Nancy Hernandez, and when I work with Francesca at the HPGM and Hispanic Collaborative, we have the data that shows we are holding back this region by not having more Hispanics at UW-Milwaukee and MATC in the pipeline. So we want to help in terms of bolstering this region's economy by helping a large population. For the benefits that accrue to UW-Milwaukee, we're at about 13% right now. The goal, if you don't know, is to become 25% undergraduate Hispanic. That's the goal, to become an HSI, or Hispanic Serving Institution. The benefits that accrue is that our students will get more federal financial aid, and more readily, and more support. So it's not that it's a benefit that comes to us as much as our students benefit. It lowers essentially the cost of education the more we have. So this is a federal program that's been in place for some time. The support that we need to work on that and I've been very careful on our campuses, we've undertaken the HSI initiative, is we don't want to single out and provide support, whether it's additional advisors or recruiters, just for Hispanic students, but we want to do the same thing for African American, for our indigenous students, and for our Asian American students. So we want to rise all boats. So we've been increasing our multicultural support in a lot of different ways and looking at our identity centers and other things. You know, how can I accelerate that? What would I need? It would be similar to how I answered Regent Bechtel. We are underfunded for the mission that we're serving. Per student basis, per student dollars, look at the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, look at some of the other data that are out there on a per student basis. We're trying to be a research one, we are a research one, but at the same time, we are you know, serving an access mission. So it's really more about opening our doors to serve almost all the students who apply here. And that means we have a higher burden in terms of the support services. And it's been on the backs of a lot of really hardworking people to have achieved that. So I'm happy to have further conversation and talk even more specifically about where we're at and what we can do to bolster that work more.
Thank you. And very happy you're pursuing that. I think it's a great thing for Milwaukee and in the region.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chancellor Mone, earlier in your presentation, you had a slide that talked about effectively, if not for Milwaukee. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to add one more, which is a personal example. That is, if not for UWM, I don't think my company would exist. We started 4 years ago. I started with a UWM grad who learned all of his entrepreneurial skills at UWM. And while I'm not sure we would have started the company if we wouldn't have met 4 years ago, I'm certain we wouldn't have gone through COVID without his leadership and what he learned while he was here at UWM. And another example that goes with that is 3 years ago, I got a call from Brian Thompson, who many of you know, who said, this is before I was a regent, I have an incredibly talented student. She's looking for a job. You should talk to her. We hired her. Initially, she managed our Milwaukee market. We promoted her again and again, and she ended up being the COO of the company, allowing me to do much less work and allowing her to manage it. And just recently, she was admitted to the Oxford MBA program and is attending there in August. So the fundamental people in my company came from UWM. So I guess I will say it. So if not for UWM, there would be no Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Weatherly. Great testimonial.
My question was answered. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Regent Jones, deep down there.
Yes, Chancellor, thank you very much for that presentation. Let me ask, where is our collective legislative representatives on these sorts of issues? And you have a bigger footprint than you did a couple years ago, but they would seem to be key to take up these sorts of issues. And I know you've probably been in touch with them, but without going too deep into it, just characterize our support.
You know, like you, when you talk with legislators, they're very polite, very respectful. Many of them are graduates of UWM, and certainly many of them are graduates of UW system campuses. And, you know, I think that the conversations that we've been having are, while polite, I think there's a collective sentiment that is hard right now to find from the legislative leadership and the majority party, some of the increases in support. And this is what Governor Thompson, I think, you know, he's leading the way in terms of the meetings that he's having with JFC chairs, with JFC members. And I think that's the answer to that, is that we are fighting a challenge that has been long in the making. It's not just today's legislators. It's ones that have been saying, collectively, we have 5 or 6 priorities in the state, whether it's around transportation, Medicare, correction system, other, you know, K-12, other things are often in front of the UW system. We're more on the discretionary side. We're not on the mandatory side. So it's made it, I think, harder to fill that. But I do think that for us, politically, the value of the UW system is like water in the sense that it should be apolitical. It should be something where we talk about economic development, we can talk about the moral imperative, but ultimately it's all those things together that really make a difference. And so how I come at this is I say, if you're an elected official, you should care about the UW system and the health of the state, because we're linked together. We make that difference. If you're an employer, you should care about the UW system because we're your best source of talent at a most affordable price. And then for all of us, you, our campuses, and I think all of us, there's the moral imperative, how we're leaving so many people behind. I don't care what your background is, we're not able, without additional support, we're making it very difficult to afford college and to help lower those barriers to bringing people together. So it's a long answer. I apologize, but that's the characterization. Nobody's to my face saying, why should we do this? But there are some who kind of hint at, I don't know if we'll be able to increase the funds, because the short answer right now is there's this mindset, and I think Governor Thompson can speak to this even more clearly, where a lot of legislators feel that today the federal funds that Governor Evers has should be spent before we allocate more tax dollars, because you guys have a lot of that funding. And we continue to try to point out two things to them. Number one, the federal funds are earmarked. They're already 50% to the students for the most part, but they're earmarked for specific COVID expenses. And the other aspect is they're one-time funds. They're not base budget. So those are the issues that we get into.
Other questions or Regents? Chancellor Mone. Seeing none, I just say, Mark, you know, it's always so helpful for us to appreciate the kind of influence that you're trying to have, the kind of impacts that you're working with your business community. You know, I've hearkened back to when we were doing the All in Wisconsin tour here. I mean, the room was packed and you have so many evangelists for the campus. This notion of priorities and what it is that we can collectively do to get to yes is, you know, been a frequent refrain each and every time we're here. And I just got to personally thank you for being so tenacious, continuing to assemble people that deeply care about this, different constituencies, to keep trying to put the pressure on to improve Milwaukee, because as Milwaukee goes, the state goes. Let's give Chancellor Mone another round of applause.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
At this time, we will turn our attention to athletics. For the benefit of our new colleagues, since 2012, the Board of Regents has called for UW institutions that participate in NCAA Division I athletics to annually provide updates to the board regarding academic, fiscal, and compliance matters. The UW system has 3 institutions with Division I NCAA athletic programs: UW-Madison, UW-Green Bay, and UW-Milwaukee. Today, we'll hear a presentation from Panther Nation Athletic Director Amanda Braun, and I'll turn it over to Chancellor Mone to make an appropriate introduction.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Regent President Peterson. Real quickly, I always like to start with why. You heard me earlier. Why are we doing this? Just like Regent Rye mentioned earlier, why he wants to be a regent. Why D1? Why is athletics important? I'll give you a few reasons. We have some incredible success. You're going to hear not just on the field, but in the classroom. It's so many years of amazing success on the field and academically. And that's what athletics for us is all about. It's student athletes. And you'll hear that all the time. It's students first. And we're really successful with having about 300 student athletes who set a ferocious pace. They also become remarkable leaders as alumni. And it's really neat to see where they've gone and how they give back and how involved they are in their communities. So it's really wonderful for those reasons. But it's also about the campus's brand and identity. And you're going to hear some of the recent successes and what we hope are some amazing things in terms of future successes with some of our recent activities. Then I'll turn the corner and just to introduce Amanda Braun, our athletic director. She's pretty special. She's somebody who has helped us after her 4 predecessors really were short timers, not only just in terms of outlasting them, but balancing the budget, being an effective budget, an effective administrator. That's kind of table stakes. You'd hope you'd have that, but she goes far beyond that. She goes beyond that as a leader in terms of setting the tone, in terms of doing things the right way. She also has really helped us with respect to a lot of the compliance issues, which you know in the world of athletics are first and foremost, a lot of times, even before we worry about other things. So it's about leadership on campus, but she's also highly respected, well-regarded in the Horizon League, and today in the NCAA, representing a number of different areas. So with that, we're very fortunate to have her, and I'd ask Amanda to come and present our athletic report.
Well, thank you, Chancellor Mone. I'll just take a minute really quickly to put my debt of gratitude for the work he's done this year. What a year as you continue to cite with COVID. It was quite an experience, and with all that he was experiencing personally, he showed up every week and he was there. Talk about a Panther quality, the tenacity and being ferocious as a leader. So thank you, Chancellor Mone, for leading us through this past year. And thank you all for having me once again. I think this is my 9th time doing this, and I missed it last year. It's my 8th time because last year we didn't even do it virtually. It is so wonderful to be with people in person. I can't even express it. ADs don't sign up to sit home in front of a computer and conduct meetings. Lots of empty nights and weekends for us, particularly this past fall. So thanks for having me here. Looking forward to a little bit more normalcy going forward. As I do each year, we'll start with our purpose and core values. And we do really look at ourselves as leaders on campus in building a foundation of passion, pride, and shining a light on a lot of what Chancellor Mone talked about with this university. If we can shine a light on that, we are doing our job. So we focus on our core values, and we keep diversity and inclusion at the center of our culture, never more important than now in an institution like ours. So how we lead is through success and excellence in really 4 areas, and this is something I talk about with you each year. Unfortunately, a lot of success this past year, despite all the challenges. So our top priority, educating our student athletes, providing a meaningful education, opportunity to obtain a degree is our top priority. Competitive excellence, our student athletes like to compete at a high level, so that we do too. So that's important for us, something we gauge, something that when we're doing it well, definitely shines a light on our university in a positive way. And then our campus and community engagement, as well as engagement around the community, our alumni, and our visibility and branding, the way that we can represent not only in our community, but regionally, and a lot of times with a national spotlight. So academic excellence, this is an update in the most recent, just a few shifts in numbers, most of them going up, which is fantastic. As you can see, our student athletes continue to excel, graduation rates and grade point averages. It's just amazing how many years in a row they've achieved at that level and set a new standard nearly every year. So one of the things that I shared most recently with a group of our faculty, and I think you have it in the report, a breakdown of the majors of our student athletes, but this is the schools and colleges, and our student athletes are represented in 10 schools and colleges, and that's a sampling of some of the clusters of our student athletes. And one of the faculty members who I shared this with was a nursing faculty, and was very surprised to see that there were 23 student athletes in the nursing program. Quite rigorous, requires a lot of time, and I'll tell you, that's obviously a testament to the student. But our coaches, they pursue those students. They want students that want to achieve at a high level. Sometimes that means missing practice, coming late, leaving early, but they're up for it. And so we're really proud that those are the types of leaders that we have recruiting and leading our teams. So competitive excellence, pretty broad-based, continuous excellence, particularly within our league, and historically a great deal of success competitively within our league. And for us, we have 12 institutions in the Horizon League now, and when we're in the top 3, we know we're competing for championships. That means at the end of the season, our teams are competing for a championship. And in the past 7 years, nearly every team has competed for a championship. And we lead the Horizon League, we like to say, and championships won during our time in the league. And we've continued that success this year. So I'm really proud that this slide is so full, by the way, that it's hard to read. This was quite a year. I remember talking with Chancellor Mone last summer and I don't know how this year is going to go. I mean, are we going to be able to compete? How's that going to look like? Boy, oh boy. Well, we actually had our best competitive year than we've had in 7 years. The incredible resilience of our student athletes and our coaches with constant testing and quarantining and all the things like where they sat on the bus and things like, it was a whole lot to deal with. And they came through with shining colors. So you can see I jammed a lot into this slide, but to summarize, we had 4 league team championships, 5 teams were represented in the NCAA championships, and 13 of our 15 teams finished in the top 3 in our league, either in regular season or in the postseason tournament. So a great deal to be proud of, lots to build on. I'm hopeful I don't see any of our staff around the office in June. I hope they have all taken a break, because what normally happens in 10 months this year happened in just about 6. So all of our support staff were just grinding, and it was a real challenge that I'm proud to say came through with flying colors. So though the pandemic impacted our ability to serve our community, our campus in person, we do annually participate in over 2,000 hours of community and campus service, and we're going to get back to that as soon as we possibly can. We did what we could virtually, some of the reading things with the Nextdoor Foundation, virtual things, but it just wasn't the same. So we're hoping to get out and really see some folks in person. With the success of our teams and our commitment to engaging with our community and our alumni, we've generated strong and consistent philanthropic support over the past several years. We now annually generate about $1 million a year in philanthropic support for Panther Athletics, which is about double where we were 8 or 9 years ago. So we're on a good trajectory. People believe in what we're doing. The enthusiasm this room showed for the Chancellor's presentation is heartwarming for me, because we see the same. People really believe in what we're doing and the way we do it on behalf of our student athletes. So we're going to keep growing and building on that. And in fact, this year we're on pace to hit our highest total ever of donations. I think we're right about $1.3 million right now. So how we've used some of those funds is to assist in elevating some visibility for our campus and through facilities projects. So proud to say that last year was supposed to be, and then baseball season got shut down. But the first season in our new baseball stadium, Franklin Field, we do play games there. We still practice at Henry Aaron Field. Those of you from Milwaukee that are familiar with Henry Aaron Field, it keeps us humble. Coach likes to say the blue collar Panther way. We go to Henry Aaron Field. It's adequate for practice, but it's certainly not a competitive facility. So a true Division I facility, $15 million. Rock Ventures is the owner operator, and we're really grateful for talk about partnerships. We do a lot of that, and they've been fantastic, making that feel like a home for our baseball student athletes. And what's cool about it is the Franklin Oak Creek area have a lot of UWM alums. And so we're hoping to draw those folks out and really, again, shine a light on UWM, get people engaged to come out and support their Panthers. So we're excited for that, and it's definitely going to help recruiting. I know Coach has got his eye on that. It should be a lot of fun the next several years. And then after 8 years of planning, we are breaking ground late this summer on what is now the O-House Center. So the Orthopedic Hospital of Wisconsin retained the naming rights for our facility. It's absolutely beautiful. We can see the design. We're completely finished with that. It's gone out to bid for construction. So we're excited to get that going. It'll be a practice home for our basketball programs, and we'll expand our athletics and recreation footprint to accommodate the needs of not only athletics, but all of our students and their recreation opportunities, intramurals and club sports. So going to make a real difference. And I want to say another thank you to Chancellor Mone for his support. And I know she couldn't be here because of our protocols, but Vice Chancellor Robin Van Harpen was critical to that also, and this group for helping pass it along. We fought for it, right? It was a Panther fight, and it's going to be fun to walk into that facility and see the impact it has on our students here. And then I'll finish my remarks by citing 2 of our most exciting moments, just when we thought it wasn't exciting enough. As we were getting into March, our men's basketball team made history with a 24-point comeback win against the #1 seed in our league, advancing to the semifinals. A great deal of media coverage, both locally, nationally. I'll never forget where I was sitting in my living room, jumping up and down, couldn't be there. That was a fantastic and momentum building, so much fan excitement about the future, a lot of young guys that were on that floor making a difference. And then while that was a high point, about 2 months later, one of the most exciting moments for Panther Athletics, since our men's basketball run at the Sweet 16, we signed Patrick Baldwin Jr., the number 4 overall recruit in the country. And if you recognize the name, he also happens to be the son of our head coach. So can't overlook that detail. And it's interesting because I have said to our staff, you know, while his father is a major part, the majority of what he chose, he wasn't going to follow his dad just anywhere, right? He took a look at Milwaukee, at UWM, and believes in what we're doing. And really the family approach that we take to our student athletes and the way that we do things, I think was evident to him over these last 4 years. And I've shared this with Chancellor Mone and some others. It was a full circle moment for me because Coach Baldwin and I worked together early in our careers at Green Bay, another UW system school. We were like, you know, the grinders, first in, last to leave, all that. So we worked together. And the first year, 18 years ago that we worked together, his son was born. So he's a product of UW system from the beginning, and he's going to play probably a pretty abbreviated career for UW, at least if everything goes well for him. So excited, as you can imagine, these moments have translated to significant fan excitement and support, and really attention to this institution, which again, that's what we look at, building a foundation of passion and pride. So season ticket sales have surged, to say the least, and we expect that to continue. And really an opportunity, a springboard, a catalyst. How do we engage folks and get them to really understand how exciting it is to be a Panther and support Milwaukee athletics? So if you can't tell, I have as much enthusiasm as Chancellor Mone does for our future and what we're doing here at UWM. I'm really excited to get out of this pandemic, put it in the rearview mirror, and get to see people again. So with that, end of my formal remarks, but happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Questions for Athletic Director Braun? Let me start with one, and then I'll go to Regent Greeby. So one of the things that's pretty unique about UWM and Panther Pride is you're in a big market, right? You've got a professional basketball team, you've got a semi-pro hockey team, you've got a baseball team, but it seems that you found a way to sort of insert yourself as a niche. Like, we are a very approachable Division I athletic department team. You can see things visibly up close. I mean, how have you done that and done that so well in the last several years?
Yeah, you know, thanks for saying that's a really good reflection point. It's our culture. You know, I said it, we get the 12 of my senior team got together for the first time in 14 months in person to do a retreat last Thursday. It was heartwarming. If not for those people and the other leaders and student athletes in our department, we would not have survived COVID. Like, I have colleagues, ADs in the country who are like, this is just awful. I mean, it was awful for all of us, but different levels of awful. So our culture, really, we care about one another. I think that's probably what Patrick has seen. That's what a lot of the people that come to us and want to stay with us see, is we care about each other. And we have that size of an athletic department in Division I where we can really do that really personally. We were able to engage with our student athletes around racial justice dialogue virtually. And 250 to 300 student athletes and staff showed up virtually for us to have really good conversations. We had breakout rooms, so it was a little more personal. But that's work. You have to, that takes time to build that and selecting the right people. Mm-hmm.
So before I ask my serious question, I would just make the observation that I think your description of your practice baseball field as adequate is very generous. Henry Aaron deserves a better field. For those of us who've been on the board for a while, we've noted the report on the historic operating debt, which is something you inherited when you came in to this position. It's been substantial, and for a while, there wasn't a lot of progress on a reduction in that debt. This year's report, I think, tells a different story and suggests that there is significant and positive reduction in the debt, with it perhaps being entirely eliminated in a couple of years. So my first question is, am I reading that right?
Correct. Yes.
Well, okay. Second, congratulations. That's a wonderful accomplishment. What has put you in a position to be able to do that after this period of time?
Yeah, I will entirely defer to our institution for stepping up and helping with that. It's been something that's been hanging there for many years, right, since I arrived, and really just the determination to figure out a way to eliminate that. And obviously, we've made some modest contributions to the extent that we can without completely devastating our department. But yeah, I would say to thank you again to Chancellor Mone, and Robin Van Harpen's worked really hard on figuring that out, and her team. So I would give all the credit to our university.
Congratulations. That's a very positive accomplishment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Regent Walsh and then President Thompson.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you about the publicity that happened in the springtime with the differences between the men's and women's basketball tournaments for the NCAA. I note that you have a nice new practice facility. First of all, what was your reaction to what happened, and did you address it here with any of your athletes? And secondly, how do you position equity in a building like that, which I'm sure is going to be a very popular facility between two basketball teams and your intramurals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And if you've ever met our women's basketball head coach, she and I think a lot alike. And Coach Baldwin, I mean, it's a team approach. They make sacrifices equally, and both take advantage when they need to. So we have a lot of conversations. As far as the national level, I was just appointed right about the time that was happening to the NCAA Division I Women's Basketball Committee. So I'm going to be in the trenches on that and excited to do that. I'm not a wallflower by any means, and I played college basketball myself. So it's near and dear to my heart, and something that will be on our radar. With the new facility, it is set up to be equitable for men and women. That's how we did it through the design process. Our deputy athletic director, Kathy Rossi, she led that project. She also is a former women's basketball player. And we, at every turn, asked both coaches about what it was that they were looking for in that facility.
It observed with interest that it seems like that controversy really gave a bump to women's college basketball. I hope you see that here at UWM.
Yes, I will say one thing that was difficult for us. Our women had an incredible year this year. They were co-champions of our league. And our men went on a run at the end and had some real buildup over the last third of the season. And all the media wanted to talk to our men's team. And I went to our lead communications person and the exec team member also who oversees that and said, what can we do? What are we doing to get the media? You know, I thought, well, maybe we haven't proactively reached out there. They said, we are offering every story, every opportunity. And Coach Recklitz is more than willing. She's incredible at that. And when people do get to sit with her, they want her back. So we have work to do there. It wasn't for lack of effort. I know that, but it's a societal thing, you know, women's sports, I think, and we've got to continue to chip away at it. I'm really encouraged to see the light that was shined on it, and hopefully I can be involved. Yeah, thanks.
President Thompson.
I would just like to thank you very much for your leadership and tell you that when Patrick starts playing, he's one of the most exciting players in the country. Our own LeBron James, that the Board of Regents wants a special meeting and we want tickets to go there, just so you know that.
I think we can arrange that, sure.
Okay, fine. The second thing is, I don't know how many of the members of the board know that you're also involved with another athletic association in the colleges, and that's called WEAC. And I just want to give you a very quick report because this year, we did not believe that we were going to be able to play sports on our college campuses. And led by Andy Levitt, our great chancellor, and other members on that board, we were able to successfully get started in January. And they had a very good, successful year in WEAC in all sports. And just another one of those pandemic things that we overcame and were able to develop. And the student athletes loved it. They asked me to raise some money, and I did. And I can't tell you how many compliments and credits and thanks I received from athletes all over the state, thanking the Board of Regents and the administration for doing what was necessary to allow them to play. Just another tidbit. And to end up the season, Whitewater played in the regional baseball game last Monday on Memorial Day at 11 o'clock in the morning. Score is 7-3 in favor of Whitewater going into the 9th inning. 2 outs on Michigan. And Whitewater throws a pitch, and there are 3 consecutive hits, and they tie up the game in the 9th inning, 7-7. They went into the 10th inning, and the Whitewater pitcher threw a ball, and they hit a home run. And we lost in the 10th inning after we were up 7-3 going into the 9th inning with 2 outs and 1 strike left. And we lost the game, but it was an exciting capstone to a very successful athletic year for WIAC. And I want to thank the chancellors who are involved. And I can see Andy smiling over there because he was instrumental in getting it done, and I appreciate it.
No further comments. I would just say, you've been here many times, and I think this is one of the best receptions you've received in probably one of the most difficult years. I have a college athlete. This was a very challenging year for those athletes. It's clear that you've persevered. Congratulations on moving into the new leadership role that you've got. As you said, you'll be in the trenches, and we'll be lucky to have you there. So congratulations, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
As President Thompson noted earlier in his report, the UW system is actively preparing now for the fall return to pre-pandemic life on our campuses in fall of 2021. This afternoon, we have 3 chancellors who will share their experience and perspectives as they, like their counterparts at other UW campuses, prepare to offer in-person classes and more face-to-face experiences, including residence halls and dining halls and athletics and concerts and social gatherings and so much more. The chancellors will also reflect on some of the lessons learned over the past year. Before we get started, I believe President Thompson, you'd like to say a few words. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Peterson. I just want to thank all of the chancellors, but we've singled out 3 chancellors to give a short presentation, 5 minutes each, who is going to share their experience and perspectives as they like their counterparts at other UW campuses, as they prepare to offer in-person classes, 75% of the classes in person this fall, and also to face their experience, including the residence halls, the dining halls, athletics, cancer, social gatherings, and much, much more. The chancellor is going to reflect on some of the lessons learned over the past year, and I am very happy that they're here. There are 3 of them. The speaking order is Chancellor Dennis Shields from Platteville, Chancellor Joe Gow, La Crosse, and also Chancellor Debbie Ford from UW Parkside. So President Peterson, if you would like to go from here.
You bet. Thank you. And I believe we'll start with Chancellor Shields. Thank you for all being here. And I would just echo President Thompson's comments that this is really representative of all of the successes that we had on all of our campuses. And we're thrilled to have you to just share with us a bit of your experiences, some of the successes, some of the challenges, and where we're headed going forward. So with that, Dennis, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Not that I'm a huge sports fan, but since before I say anything, I just want to mention the Pioneer men's basketball team won the WIAC basketball championship this year. It's with a good measure of humility that I make any commentary here, because one of the advantages that each of us as chancellors have is that we see what our people do on our campuses day to day. That's how we got through this year, and those are the lessons that we learned. And that's the faculty, the staff, and the students. And I don't think I'm speaking that UW-Platteville was unusual. I think it's a sign of what people do day to day on the campus. And my remarks, because they're going to be a little bit of a sandwich. One of the things I would tell you that in order to make our budget balance this year, all those additional hours and all those extra efforts were made in a year where we had to put furloughs and pay cuts in place. So anytime a legislator says something bad about our people on our campus, I want you to fire back at them and say, when it was time to stand up and make sure that we could have classes this year and have our campuses open to the extent that they could, it was done under duress and without complaint. I haven't had one person on my campus complain about that pay cut or object to working extra hours when it's necessary. So the other end of the sandwich, I'll make a point also. So deans, department chairs, everybody's planning to do as much face-to-face they possibly can, but they're also acknowledging the lessons that we've learned this year about how to deliver hybrid and at a distance. And many of our general education courses will still have the option for some students that it works for them to take a course online. I would observe that about a year ago, 95% of our faculty stepped up to get extra training on how to deliver hybrid and virtual classes. They did an extraordinary job doing that, and that was actually before they were given an incentive to do that. This fall, we will be making an extra effort to actually have not only the incoming students this fall, but the students who missed out last fall on the sort of normal orientation process that goes on, to have that. We're going to make every effort to encourage them to be a part of that. In addition, we've had 3 groups graduate during the pandemic, last May, last December, this May, that didn't get to go through a traditional commencement exercise. We're planning to do a traditional commencement exercise in December, but we will probably about this time next year be hosting an opportunity for all those graduates to come back and experience walking across the stage and shaking my hand if they're so inclined as they receive their degrees. We're going to do it with enough advance planning that several months, so they'll have a chance to do that. In addition, we're doing all of the sort of normal things that you would expect in a mural sports. We're figuring that out. All of this is being done with the understanding that the spacing requirements will be relaxed enough because of vaccinations and reductions in pandemic challenges that we'll be able to do that. Although I had a parent fire back, we're going to do everything we can, assuming that things continue on the trend that they are, but we will be prepared to reverse course if things reverse. All our meal plans will be back in place so that the auxiliary services, all those other sort of activities will be ongoing. We're planning on the density in our residence halls also to be ongoing back to pre-pandemic circumstances. And so all of those things are going on. We've also expanded our Succeed program, which is our bridge program in the summer, so 3 times as many students will be participating in that program. And this is targeted at Pell eligible and first generation college students. And as an incentive to do that, and this is the back end of my sandwich, we've committed private dollars, philanthropic dollars to support those students and give them incentives. So each one of them who successfully completes that program will receive a $1,000 scholarship. It's an exposure of $150,000. It's being done by private money. I would suggest to you that that sort of commitment from our state to our need-based students would be appreciated. So I'll pause there and let you ask questions afterwards.
Chancellor Shields, I'm going to go to Chancellor Gao.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I would echo everything that Dennis has said. And I think the most extraordinary experience from my perspective was being the leader of just an outstanding team of vice chancellors in particular and other administrators. And I think all of us would agree we've never seen that kind of collaboration. And you're talking about making decisions constantly that are very high stakes and have to be done sometimes very quickly. You may recall that our campus was one of those that did have a surge. I will never forget that day that I looked at those daily test results. Of course, we all do, and you live by those numbers. We've got 80 positives in one of the residence halls, and we need to take action. And as a matter of fact, the teamwork on the system level, extraordinary. We got together over the weekend and several meetings on Saturday with President Thompson and his senior officials, and then brought all the chancellors together on a Sunday morning, and I had to apologize for that, and talk about what's going to happen at UWL. And fortunately, we did get through that and resumed operations after a 2-week pause. And again, that's just all kinds of teamwork that make that happen. So that was something that was very inspiring and instructive for the future. And the future looks really good. We will have some remnants of the COVID situation. So there will be some quarantine space that we've set aside in the fall. We happen to have a res hall that's offline. And so, that works pretty well. We have 100 beds there if we need it. We're hoping that we won't, of course. And testing will still be available. True North will be with us for a few weeks in the fall. And if people are symptomatic, certainly they can get tested at our health center as well. To confess, I still get tested every week. It's so easy to do. I feel like I'm sort of a very privileged person that I can go into the building next door and do a quick test and just know that, yeah, this science works. I was vaccinated a few months ago, and so it's always good to get that positive test. I don't know how long I'll keep doing that, but I want to share with you a very, and the other thing too, that is not a remnant of COVID is we will have 94% of our courses in person. And I know we the 75 number is, wow, you're way ahead of that. That's the way things are normally on a campus like ours. We're highly residential. We have very few online courses, although we do have programs that are moving more and more online in niche ways. We have a fantastic student affairs administration program that's designed for working professionals in student affairs. And we found through the pandemic, they're all the more eager to connect with us in a way that fits their lifestyle. So we do some online things, but primarily we're an in-person operation, and 94% of the courses will be in person. Another 3% will be online, and then another 3% hybrid. So we're getting back to the way things usually are. And that's really important because I will say, throughout this experience, we've all received lots of email. I know everybody in the room, you get all kinds of email. And as Chancellor, you're very privileged to hear from all the different constituencies that make up a university. And the one that I'm always I prioritize are parents of students. And so I got an email, and lots of email again, but this one was very memorable because the mom said, thank you for keeping this going during such unusual times. I'm in education at a K-12 school. I know how difficult this is, and so really want to commend you for that. And our daughter is a first-year student at your university, and she says she's doing well academically, but I do need to share with you that the other night she called and said, Mom, I haven't met any of the students in my class. I don't feel like I have any kind of relationships. And that was very powerful. And I can kind of see on some of your faces, you think back to that first year, you're just, who am I going to meet new people and what's that going to be like? And it was a very potent reminder of how important the outside of class things are. And those were very, very limited on our campuses. And that was kind of sad. I would walk into that. Many of you have seen our new student union, and there's nobody there. And you said the whole point of it was to build a place where people would congregate and hang out together and so on. So I shared that email with our team, and I said, let's remember what is happening right now, and we have to be very sensitive to that and try just everything we can to get back to normal for the fall. And so we've been doing that, and the enrollment numbers look fantastic. It will be although this isn't wood, but a record year in enrollment for us. And it's a reminder of why people come to a university like ours and what we need to focus on. And, you know, that email that I got, I did reply back to that mom, certainly. And I said, thank you for your kind note and understanding the challenges we're facing. And I'm deeply sorry that your daughter is not getting the typical first year experience at our university, but I can assure you that her second year will get back to why she came to our school. And I would be delighted to personally welcome her back when we're out of these pandemic conditions. And I really hope I do get to meet that student, because her mom certainly sent a message that had a very dramatic impact on us.
Thank you, Chancellor Gao. Turn to Chancellor Ford. Go ahead, Debbie.
Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to briefly share how UW-Parkside is preparing for fall of 2021, and certainly a year that will be different than fall of 20. As you know, at UW-Parkside, we are focused on meeting our bold goal. And our bold goal is to increase the number of graduates by 50% by 2025. And I am very happy to report that we are building on very positive momentum on our campus. Having graduated the two largest classes in our history in May of 2020 and May of 2021. The largest class of graduates in UW-Parkside history just received their degrees a few weeks ago. And what a sight it was, with a virtual ceremony and then an opportunity for the graduates to meet their deans, come together in their majors. And one of the best memories for me is watching students that had not been together for 14 months face-to-face see each other for the first time as they celebrated their commencement. It is all about that. And for us at UW-Parkside, this happened because of the dedication of our faculty, our staff, and the resilience of our students. We have adapted, we have overcome, and we have certainly pivoted a lot during the past year. So let me tell you a little bit about what fall will look like and then how we're going to get there. So first of all, as I've said, our campus will look more like the fall of 2019 than the fall of 2020. 75 to 80% of our classes are scheduled to be delivered face-to-face. Pre-pandemic, about 15% of our courses were delivered online. And our deans and our innovative faculty have been increasing the number of online program offerings at UW-Parkside. So we anticipate that that will increase going into fall of 2021. Following the completion of the investment from the state and your approval of the Wiley Hall renovations that actually started during the pandemic, and a few of you have seen some of that progress. It's a $35 million investment of infrastructure. Most of our university faculty and staff will be back on campus. This construction is certainly impacting many student service offices on campus, and those folks will be moving back into those spaces upon completion, which will be late July or early August, just in time for the fall semester. Our admissions team will restart small group tours, just as we saw earlier today here at UW-Milwaukee with Ranger Saturdays and Experience Days, but we have hosted small groups and families throughout this past year to introduce them to UW-Parkside. We know that fall sports will be played in the fall at UW-Parkside and our other campuses across the system, which is great. And campus furniture and common areas and in our classrooms will be reset. I hope you've taken notice of how we have reset our campus to respond to the pandemic. And that was not an easy task for our campus to do. And just take a look here in the Student Center and how that has been reset. We have to reset it back to the pre-pandemic times on our campuses, and that will take effort. I also want you to know that at UW-Parkside, we have invested greatly in live streaming and lecture capturing software in our classrooms. And with some of our stimulus funds, we will continue that investment this semester. And as Dennis mentioned, our faculty have fully embraced the extra training that they have taken advantage of last summer and throughout the academic year to enhance their effectiveness of delivering courses online. We will be doubling our efforts for equity, diversity, and inclusion as we hope to not only eliminate or excuse me, not only close, but eliminate the equity gaps that we have at UW-Parkside, like our colleagues here at UW-Milwaukee. We will also be hiring back our student workforce. That is one of the things that was very difficult when the pandemic started, is we had to really lay off, I would use in quotes, our student workforce because we were not able to accommodate that work because that needed to be conducted face-to-face. Our residence halls will increase to our capacity that will be closer to what it was in fall of 19, and concert halls, performance spaces will all be active again. So how will we get there? Well, first, here in the summer of 2021, I will say, directed our team, and that is our entire university, to take time to reflect, to recharge, and to renew. It is vitally important that our faculty and our staff take time off because it has been constant, like living in a pressure cooker for 15 months. And so it is vitally important that we take care of ourselves and we take care of one another to be able to fully engage in the fall of 2021. We are happy to report that our summer enrollment is up 12% for undergraduates, which is outstanding for us at UW-Parkside, and our overall summer enrollment is up 20%. So we have more students learning, which that's the best news of all. And fall registration is lagging a bit, but I think that's related to graduating the 2 largest classes in our history back to back. But we know that that will increase. Our students do tend to register a little bit later. We also need to recognize the long-term impacts of the pandemic year on our students. Both Dennis and Joe have talked about this, and I certainly, when we heard from Mia earlier from UW-Milwaukee, we have to acknowledge the learning loss for some of our students that just could not adapt to learning in an online environment. And how do we support them? Both our students, but our students who will enroll with us who have just finished their high school experiences. We know that there's increased anxiety, depression, and mental health issues with our students. So we, like our partner campuses, are investing by expanding our summer bridge opportunities, and we will double our Ranger Kickstart program for our students. For our orientation program to welcome new students, we will do virtual registration, but then we will have small group events during August for students to get to know one another and really to begin the semester building a cohort, that cohort of what we would, the incoming class of 2021. But we will lead with this. It is our intention to focus on the human dimension of what makes our university work, because it is truly the people of Parkside that make Parkside who and what it is today. So we are going to focus on with greater intention on what it means to gather and to be together. And I think that takes special focus for all of us because we haven't been together. We are going to make time for informal interactions and also make time to make sure that we don't just rush to a task, but we really focus on building that community that is so important on all of our campuses. Earlier this semester, I invited 3 psychologists from our psychology department to talk about the impacts of COVID-19 in their teaching, but also ask them to share the research on how it is affecting young adults and adolescents. And it was so important to hear from these faculty members because one of the notions that they shared was that they missed the most was the informal opportunities after class and right before class to engage with the students. That was more difficult in a virtual environment. So my hope is that we will make time and space and give grace as we focus on building back the communities that make the University of Wisconsin so special. And so last, I just have to give a huge shout out to the people of UW-Parkside, because without their dedication, without their commitment, we would not continue to be successful. And so I could not be more proud of our faculty, our staff, and our amazing students. So I'm looking forward to fall of 2021. It has been way too quiet on our campus, and I can't wait for it to be loud with students and faculty and staff learning together. So thank you.
Thank you all 3 chancellors. And let me just start with Regents assembled questions. Let me start with you, Chancellor Gao. I spent the morning of Sunday of Labor Day pacing at my mother-in-law's house talking to Chancellor Blank. And I vividly remember being on our conference call that Sunday evening And, you know, I have to just recognize and call you and your team out because we were at a pivotal point as a system. And we worked through those 2 weeks and they were not easy, but it required steady leadership. And, you know, I can't thank you enough for that. I know I speak for President Thompson, the entire UW system team. Then I'll move on to Chancellor Ford. Just a couple weeks ago, maybe it was just last week, Debbie sent me a text after commencement. And during the course of the year, because we were all continuing to deliver curriculum, my company was able to generate a pretty substantial internship program with UW-Parkside that we're just thrilled to have. But at the end of commencement, Chancellor Ford was meeting folks and she met an individual who graduated and she said, you know, so proud of you. What are you going to do now that you've graduated? And he said, well, I already have a job and I'm going to work for TDS. And she took a picture and sent him to me. That wouldn't have happened if we weren't all committed to making sure we delivered the kind of in-person curriculum that we did this year. Then finally, not last but not least, Dennis, I really want to recognize you for what you started with, which is our faculty and our staff have been completely resilient. You know, I made mention of that today, but we wouldn't have had the kind of success, we wouldn't have had the kind of community impact that we had. We wouldn't have made our communities feel as comfortable as we were able to when we were sitting there Labor Day weekend. But our perseverance made us a beacon of hope in the state. And it's because of the leadership of all of our campuses, our chancellors, our provosts, and all of your faculty and staff, and most notably our students. So this is just an illustration of kind of things that we've had to address. The future looks bright. I think we're all extremely excited. But with that, I just wanted to say and share my thanks for all of the chancellor's works over the last really 16 months. Questions from Regents? I'll start with Regent Bechtel and then go to Regent Walsh. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I guess I want to say thank you and make a couple of statements. And the thank you, I'm actually going to start with my fellow regents and with President Thompson, because I think we set a pretty clear directive that on campus, in person, let's get this going. Let's be open in the fall was really important. And so I thank my fellow colleagues for really setting that direction. I hope it was a good direction for you as chancellors. It made your lives easier. And frankly, it was a two-way communication, as I recall, where the chancellors were just as much saying to us, we need to be open, we need to serve our students. So I think, I guess I'm patting myself and all of us on the back. So thank you to this group assembled here. And Dennis, your comment, I just want to pause on that for a moment. The top of your comment there, where you thank the faculty and staff for their sacrifice. I'm a labor and employment lawyer, and so I give guidance and counsel to employers, mostly in the private sector. And I can tell you that when COVID hit, most of the private workforce also faced furloughs, salary reductions, other kinds of things. We trim the sails, right? But as private companies came out of this, the next series of calls I was getting, and sometimes it was a month later, sometimes months later, we were restoring pay and benefits. We were trying to do some makeup because a lot of those companies were coming out of it and doing relatively well, and they wanted to share back to the private workforce. That did not happen with the public workforce and the public sector and the good folks that work on our campuses, faculty and staff. And I like very much, Dennis, that profile and courage, the way you said, by golly, if somebody is going to attack our people, we need to defend our people, because they did stand, they did deliver, and we have not been able to restore them fully. That's just a fact. And, you know, kudos to the fine men and women within the university system that do this work and educate our students and do good work for our state. There was a sacrifice made, and I'm not going to forget it. And if I hear someone with not a lot of facts talk about, you know, their work ethic or what they're doing, I'm going to do what Dennis has suggested we all do, and we defend this system and we defend the people who deliver every day to the state and to our students. So thanks, Dennis, for making that very strong statement. I'm with you.
Regent Walsh.
Thank you. So pivoting in a pressure cooker is so difficult. And I so admire what you accomplished at your campuses together with your faculty and staff and all of the chancellors here. I'm curious, so many good things happen. Is there anything that any of you wish you had a mulligan on, something that you would have done differently? Oftentimes we can learn a lot from that.
I will confess, we were talking about, and you mentioned the WIAC, actual athletic competition. I was skeptical, and my colleagues, no, we had a pretty spirited meeting. Yeah, I think actually you got the two here. Yeah, we were like, because the feeling was, why risk it? And if you have a problem, I think all of us would say that your sort of worst nightmare is you run out of quarantine and isolation space. I don't know what you would do. So that was kind of, let's protect that. But people made the argument it can be done safely. And I will say, I talked earlier about getting tested every week. You can't help but notice who else is there. And it was the athletes. They really led the way on getting tested and staying safe. And so we were able to have the competition. So that one was, I will say, I was wrong on that. And I got to give them all the credit in the world. And also learned that for Division III, it's not so much spectators, it's the participation. And those student athletes it's just really important to them to be able to participate. And they only have so many years to do it. So that's an area, yeah, I would say I did not have that right.
I would say that I'm still in that reflection time period, and I know our entire team is. And then I know several groups are having retreats to ask that question. But I do think there's one thing that I wish we could have done better and maybe a little differently, is to recognize the needs that our students had that had learned face-to-face, and then were thrown into this environment so quickly that we didn't anticipate would last, almost half a spring and then all of the next academic year. And I just wish we had better ways to support them, because as we have learned, those that thrived continued to thrive. Those in the middle, okay, but those that struggled even more. And so I think that's one place that I wish we could have done things a little bit differently.
Well, what I have to say sort of mirrors what Debbie said, is that knowing what we know now, much stronger investment in student mental health issues. Great lessons we've learned, because now we have other tools we can use also, but that was the challenge. I turn it a little bit. So I had bi-weekly Zoom meetings with students, and then the other weeks we do it with faculty. The students soon tired of it, so only the student senate people would show up. But what we discovered is it was a great way to get faculty and staff together. So every one of those Zoom meetings, we have 300 people. Go figure, they want to hear from the chancellor that frequently. And it wasn't just me talking, it was all the senior teams. And I think that's a lesson that we'll carry forward. We may not do them every other week, but we'll do 3 or 4 of them in the semester to give them a chance to talk to us.
Dr. Rye.
Well, unlike some of the other regions, I got to observe firsthand just what all of our chancellors did, and I just want to make a comment and commend them. I'm really happy that tomorrow a staff member will be recognized from UW-Oshkosh that I had the honor of working with almost daily at one point, and just got to see the efforts that the chancellors and the staff put together. I've had the honor or the responsibility of signing the orders for all the students at 2 campuses. So my inbox is never empty on my medical record. So I can tell you firsthand just how good of a job these chancellors have done and their staff has done. And to Governor Thompson's point, having, launched a vaccination site at a few campuses, the system did save the state. and I want to say that publicly, the system saved the state and its responsibility and its actions. That being said, we keep using, and this is more of a request of our chancellors, we keep using the word normal, and it's a good goal. But understand that, especially when I'm referencing this incoming freshman class, the amount of trauma that they have faced, it's no fault of their own or their teachers or their school districts, but they will likely come in the least prepared freshman class that you have ever seen. On top of that, they will come in with the most amount of mental health issues, especially our Black and brown students, because their families experience the most amount of death in this state. So to be prepared for that is something that I'll be asking you throughout the summer, is what are we doing? And I'm really happy to hear what we're making the investments in the virtual platform, and that's great. I guess my thought process is I'd like to see just as much, if not even more, investment being made to the individual student outside of virtual to make them reacclimate to a society that they've kind of been taken away from for some 15 months, for some maybe 6 months. But you will now see the most trauma-affected freshman class of probably our lifetime outside of when we've gone to war. And I think it's really important that we recognize that, as Regents we recognize that, and make sure that we understand that there will be issues come September, there'll be issues for months, and that we continue to keep track of that.
Very good advice. Other questions of Regents? Regent Atwell, and then I think we'll move to President Thompson to close, stay on time. Go ahead, Bob.
First of all, I'd like to echo a lot of the thanks that we've heard. I guess I'd like to repeat it. I've said it before that, the courage we showed as a system in committing to open in the fall of 2020 was an act of leadership by system administration. The dramatic commitment to testing, arguably, Dr. Rye, I don't know, the best testing regimen across universities in the country.
Well, having been part of that, I would say yes, Bob.
That's the correct answer.
And I'm very heartened by the enthusiasm about opening. You guys said it, and gals and guys said it in different ways. Chancellor Ford, your comments that 2021 opening will be more like 2019 than 2020, which is great. It sounds to me, as we were going through that, almost like, so what's not going to be like 2019? And yes, we have to be vigilant. And I also want to add this from a personal point of view, because I've expressed opinions before. I appreciate that, as far as I know, at none of our campuses are we requiring students or faculty or staff to receive vaccines. We're encouraging it, we're making them available, but we're respecting their individual choice. Because you, I think, as chancellors, but certainly me, maybe because who I am, I get plenty of phone calls and emails from parents and some students, who don't want to be characterized as selfish and unscientific if they choose not to get the vaccine. So I think overall, when I look at the scale of what we've been dealing with, I'm just really impressed and really grateful for what people have done. Thank you.
Or Chancellor Shields, go ahead.
I'd just like to say one more thing, and I think my colleague chancellors will admit to this also. The next layer down below the chancellors, those teams, my senior team, I think every one of the senior teams made this happen. We can direct and help and try to inspire, but without the vice chancellors and assistant chancellors on my campus, this would have been a train wreck. They showed remarkable commitment.
President Thompson. You want to finish?
You've heard from 3 outstanding chancellors, but that's just emblematic of all the chancellors. And I could go through and tell stories about each one of these leaders that have done outstanding jobs. Jim Schmidt, who spent Friday nights, Saturdays, patrolling his campuses, going down to the bars. I accused him of going down there to party, but he said, oh no, I was down there to make sure they were wearing their mask and doing well. Andy Levitt, who went all over his campus time and time again. Every time I called Andy, he was doing something to make sure that he was protecting his students. The same thing for Mike Alexander, same thing for the wonderful chancellors from Stevens Point and Superior and Stout. And these three individuals up there, Joe Gow, his staff was absolutely exceptional. And Debbie has pointed out that not only last year, but this year she had record graduations. That's amazing during a pandemic. And that's the leadership that all of these exhibited. And Dennis, he followed Jim Shields. He was going down to his fraternities day in and day out. And he learned a big lesson. And that is when you get up in the middle of the night, turn on the lights. Poor Dennis decided to get up one night and forgot to turn on the lights and fell down the steps, ended up in the hospital, and for several weeks was hobbling around. But Dennis, you've recovered and you did well. And every time I asked the chancellors about the 75% opening up in the fall, every single one of the chancellors, not one negative vote, they said they all could do it. And several of these chancellors, led by Joe Gow, said that we'll do better than 75%. I just want the Board of Regents to know we have some real champs, some real leaders as chancellors, and each and every one of them I'm so proud of. And I just wanted to say publicly, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to work with you and serve with you.
I'd close by saying the same thing, which is we should give all of our chancellors an incredible round of applause, not just for yourselves, but for your teams, your senior teams, your faculty, your administrative staff. I mean, this couldn't have been done without the entire team effort, and for that, we are all incredibly grateful.
Nice job, too.
Chancellors, at this time, I'll ask the board members to stay in place in their seats or online while we complete the roll call vote to move into closed session. Following the vote, please remain where you are while Jess clears the line, which I'm not sure we'll need to do. Vice President Grebe, will you read the motion to move into closed session?
Move that the Board of Regents move into closed session to A, consider 4 UW-Milwaukee honorary degree nominations as permitted by section 1985 1F of the Wisconsin statutes. B, consider amended employment and additional compensation agreements for UW-Madison Associate Head Football Coach Offensive Coordinator as permitted by section 1985 1C and E of the Wisconsin statutes. C, consider amended employment and additional compensation agreements for UW-Madison Assistant Football Coach Defensive Coordinator as permitted by section 1985 1C and E of the Wisconsin statutes. And D, consider personnel evaluations of chancellors as permitted by section 1985 1C of the Wisconsin statutes.
Regents, is there a second? Second by Regent Bogost. Jess, will you please call the roll?
Regent President Peterson?
Yes.
Regent Vice President Grebe?
Yes.
Regent Atwell?
Yes.
Regent Bechtel?
Yes.
Regent Bogus?
Yes.
Regent Cologne?
Yes.
Regent Jones? Regent Klein? Regent Lavzo? Regent Medideeds? Regent Miller?
Yes.
Regent Peterson? Regent Rye?
Yes.
Regent Saffold?
Yes.
Regent Stanford Taylor?
Yes.
Regent Tucker?
Yes.
Regent Walsh?
Yes.
Regent Weatherly?
Weatherly? Yes. Thank you.
Regent Peterson? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, yes.
You were going to Peterson, not Weather.